Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable, see playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 3601, Teamwork. All of the Eternal Realm warriors present were always on guard. They frequently released their spiritual senses to monitor their surroundings. Among all of them, the Wing King had the sharpest senses. Whether it was a mosquito or a fly, he immediately noticed everything. However, the two big-headed monsters quietly appeared and abducted the two men in black robes. It was very odd. Crack, crack, crack. Help me. One of the men in black robes named Brock was still conscious and cried faintly for help. Moreover, the sound of his bones being chewed also alerted everyone's ears in the immensely quiet environment. The other men in black robes could not take it, so they tried to attack the big-headed monster to save Brock. Stop, the leader of the men in black robes shouted. But Brock, one man in black robes said anxiously. Brock was his best friend. How could he watch the monster chew him bit by bit? I've made myself clear. Don't go there, the leader of the black-robed men said firmly. He was the leader of the Night Being race, and he cared about all of his race's members. The monster not far away was devouring one of his members, but he did not go there to save him. However, it wasn't because he didn't want to, but more of he couldn't. The other men in black robes fell silent. Even though their faces weren't that visible due to their thick robes, the others felt their helplessness. What are these monsters? Pearson asked in a low voice. His hands had already turned into thin spider threads, ready to fight at any time. At best, the Eternal Realm hunters had only gone to the Supreme Pure Realm to explore. They didn't know much about the treacherous beings or the Jade Pure Realm. They are treacherous beings, too. They are hostility-level treacherous beings, and they belong to the killing type, the leader of the men in black robes answered. Killing type? What do you mean? Pearson asked again. Most treacherous beings have their own goals. Take the one that possessed Zen, for example. When something blocked it from its goals, that's the only time it attacked. But the killing type of treacherous beings are different. Their goal is to kill, so we have to leave. The leader of the men in black robes explained in a low voice. Then let's go, Pearson agreed. Then, the three Eternal Realm hunters quickly walked towards the door. On the other hand, the snake goddess looked at Zen. Zen still looked like he had regained his consciousness as he calmly gazed at the crowd. Earlier, the treacherous being had howled in an attempt to warn them to leave. It was clear that it was out of kindness. With such a kind gesture it was unlikely that it would hurt Zen. Take care, said the snake goddess, even though it was unknown if Zen had hurt her or not. Then, she turned around and left quickly with Fuxi and the other Eternal Realm warriors. The two monsters were still about 10 feet away from the crowd. They squatted on the ground and slowly chewed the two men in black robes. They did not intend to attack the others, but they just stared at the crowd with their large, grotesque eyes. As the warriors passed by them, a chill ran down their spines, and their hair stood on end. Aside from the unpleasant feeling that the treacherous beings caused them, they also felt a hint of cruelty, a killing aura that made them feel as if all life forms were nothing but garbage to them. No one looked at the big-headed monsters as they passed by. Instead, they stared at the door. It should be safe after they entered the door. Just as they were 4 miles away from the door, however, a dozen large heads popped out from the edge of the round tray. It appeared as if these big-headed monsters had reached a mutual agreement. At that moment, they crawled up from the edge of the round tray and gathered in the middle. So many of them. Squeak, 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 King Yayan exclaimed with wide eyes. Charge, Eastern Emperor Tai commanded in a deep voice. It was unfortunate that they couldn't even deal with an ordinary treacherous being. There were more than 10 of them in this place, and according to the leader of the men in black robes, the killing type were far more dangerous than the ordinary ones. What they didn't know was that at the bottom of the round tray, a large black head hung upside down. The pitch black head was over 10,000 feet high, and its eyes were closed. It should be asleep. Around its neck were big-headed monsters that clung to each other, which made them look like a bunch of grapes. Those big-headed monsters kept falling off the black head's neck. After they fell, they climbed from the bottom of the round tray up to the top of it. At that point, everyone had a bad feeling and sped up. The monsters looked stupidly ridiculous. They had big heads but small bodies, which gave the impression that they moved slowly. However, they were surprisingly fast. The men in black robes who were in front dashed and left a series of shadows in their wake. With such a speed, they could enter the door in the blink of an eye. By the time they were a little more than 100 feet away from the door, the big-headed monsters suddenly turned into black shadows and silently flew over. "Dodge!" the leader of the men in black robes shouted. Sadly, it was too late. Although the people behind stopped, they could not see clearly how the monsters attacked. As a result, 4 men in black robes who were still running disappeared. Crack, crack, crack. When everyone snapped back to their senses, 4 monsters nearby had already stopped and slowly devoured the men in black robes. Copious amounts of blood gushed from their mouths, accompanied by the pained howls of the men in black robes. The big-headed monsters that were farther away still crawled slowly towards them. These big-headed monsters had quite strange habits. They were never in a hurry to attack. If one ran away, they only stared at them with their black eyes. "Chief, what should we do?" a man in black robes whimpered. The night being race did have some experience in dealing with treacherous beings. This race's unique abilities only worked in the dark region. Even if their opponents were the powerful treacherous beings, they could still fight against them in the dark region. Outside the dark region, however, they were far inferior to even the ordinary Eternal Realm warriors. "Go back," Pearson suddenly said. Eastern Emperor Tai countered, "I'm afraid if we retreat, we won't have a chance to survive. We can only go all out and charge. Everyone." As he spoke, Pearson pointed at the door not far away. Dozens of big-headed monsters climbed up from the edge of the round tray, and slowly approached the door. If they forcefully rushed towards them, they would all die. "Retreat," said Fuxi. No one had expected that they would face such a crisis in a short time. This place was much more dangerous than the winding road. These big-headed monsters are really odd. "Don't move too fast. Retreat slowly," the snake goddess strongly reminded. "So what if we retreat? We will still die," a man in black robes shouted hysterically. "Odin, shut up," the leader hissed. "It's all your fault. You brought us into this desperate situation. If you want to retreat, you can retreat by yourselves. I'm sorry, but I won't follow you." Afterward, the man in black robes named Odin brought out a yellow stone and crushed it. A ball of yellow light burst out from the stone and quickly pulled around his legs. It was the divine walking stone, which could greatly increase one's speed in a short amount of time. Swish! Then, he turned into a beam of light and rushed towards the door. Even if his speed had increased by more than 3 times, 7 big-headed monsters surrounded him even faster as he dashed towards the door. Crack, crack, crack. The 7 monsters formed a circle, then chewing sounds filled the air. Then, they immediately divided Odin among themselves. Chapter 3602, the 7th time. Odin's miserable death was a lesson to the remaining men in black robes. They didn't dare to act recklessly anymore. The snake goddess, Fuxi, and the 3 eternal realm hunters, however, remained calm. The snake goddess said, "I think the treacherous being that has possessed Zen knows what's going on. Maybe it can protect us." Letting the treacherous being protect them seemed an inconceivable thought. But it had given them a kind warning before. Perhaps seeking its protection was the only choice that remained. They didn't have much reason to hope, but they still followed the snake goddess's instructions and retreated, step by step. "Wing King, can you tell Zen about the situation we are in?" the snake goddess asked. The Wing King nodded and sent the news of the monsters with big heads to the regal jade spirit through the civilization artifact. In Zen's inner world, the primeval Lord of Heaven had gathered dozens of people, ready to sing together. Now that the treacherous being had regained its consciousness, it was possible for them to communicate with it. Zen's avatar floated on the sidelines and watched them prepare. They had undergone periods of training, thanks to which they became more and more skillful. They only needed to wait for the core of the heavenly obsession civilization to transmit the syllables to them. Zen had previously tried to communicate with the treacherous being, but had failed since the latter didn't have a mind of its own. The regal jade spirit used the grand teleportation and appeared beside Zen before saying seriously, "Zen, the Wing King and the others haven't left." "What? Why?" Zen exclaimed, taken aback. "A number of treacherous beings have appeared and blocked their way." Treacherous beings. This meant even more trouble. According to what they had predicted before, the treacherous being named Campbell would leave Zen's body after fulfilling his wish. But it now looked like things weren't that simple. "This round tray hasn't been visited in a long time and the big-headed treacherous beings appeared as soon as we arrived," Zen murmured. I don't think it's a coincidence. Campbell obviously knows about it, or he wouldn't have warned the snake goddess and the others to leave, the primeval Lord of Heaven said, trying to analyze the situation. Zen's eyes flashed. He then said to the civilization artifact of the Heavenly Obsession Civilization, translate my words into Sanskrit. A while later, a chorus sounded from within Zen's inner world. Master Campbell, can you hear me? I'm Zen Luo, the owner of this body. Campbell stood still, silver spear in hand. Many big-headed monsters were slowly climbing up from the edge of the round tray. Some of them were playing with their huge, horrible heads, rolling them around as they went. They were slow but they gradually formed an encirclement. Campbell, however, was in no hurry. He seemed to be waiting for these monsters to appear. He had waited for a while before he saw the snake goddess, Fuxi, and the others return. He howled, "You idiots! Didn't you understand what I told you?" He had asked these humans to leave out of the kindness of his heart. After all, they had a sort of connection with him because he was a human spirit, a continuation of the race. Campbell was still lost in thought when an unpleasant voice sounded from Zen's elixir field. The voice was neither male nor female. It was, instead, a combination of several voices. Master Campbell, can you hear me? I'm Zen Luo, the owner of this body. Campbell was stunned. This was the Sanskrit land. How could Zen speak Sanskrit? The voice was unpleasant on the ears but he could hear it clearly. Why can you speak our language? Campbell asked. You will know once you check my inner world, replied Zen. Out of curiosity, Campbell began to check Zen's inner world as he was told. He saw that a group of people were divided into 3 rows, making complicated sounds. I once communicated with a creature from outside the chaos. I'm prepared. A team of so many people. It's interesting. Campbell was intrigued by what he saw. The creatures in the chaos lacked knowledge and experience. Limited by their world, neither could they communicate with creatures in the main world, nor did they have a complete understanding of the main world. However, Zen had overcome the obstacles by virtue of the advantage in numbers. Campbell had never seen such a thing before. His companions would be shocked if they knew of this. Campbell became more interested in Zen. He asked, "What's the matter? Do you want to take back your body?" The civilization artifact transmitted this sentence to the core of the Heavenly Obsession Civilization for deciphering, and then to Zen. The core of the Heavenly Obsession Civilization was fast, but it still took some time to decipher the message and transmit it to Zen. When Zen and the primeval Lord of Heaven heard Campbell, they looked at each other, bitter smiles. It looked like taking back his physical body wasn't going to be an easy task. But right now, the most important thing was to ensure the safety of the snake goddess and her companions. Let's talk about it later. Both of us are from the human race. Can you protect my friends? Zen pleaded. As he spoke, the snake goddess and the others moved to his side. The big-headed monsters were still following them closely. I'm not human, Campbell said arrogantly. Human spirits were one of the most noble creatures in the main world, which was why they were proud of themselves. Campbell continued, I can't protect them. I don't even know if I can survive. Zen and the primeval Lord of Heaven were shocked. You don't know if you can survive these treacherous beings? Campbell suddenly looked sad and weary. Most likely not. We were no match for them, at least in the past many years. We wouldn't have been trapped in that place otherwise. Campbell didn't explain any further but Zen and the primeval Lord of Heaven could tell that he was referring to the winding road. We have tried many times. I myself have tried at least 6 times, Campbell said, shaking his head. 6 stripes were engraved on the armor of his right arm. He then raised his long spear and used the tip of the spear to add another stripe on his right arm. This was his 7th time here. The snake goddess, Fuxi, and the others were confused as they watched this. They didn't know why Campbell had added that extra stripe. Chapter 3603, The Power of Silver Energy. After adding that stripe, Campbell said, I have tried this for 6 times already. And I have failed each and every time. It's quite possible that I'll fail once again. Nevertheless, Campbell remained calm and collected. His composure caused Zen and the primeval Lord of Heaven sheer anxiety. The treacherous beings were practically invincible and immortal. If Campbell failed once again, he could merely return to the winding road and be resurrected. However, Zen and the others would be in big trouble. Therefore, this whole situation was extremely nerve-wracking. If I live through this, your friends might survive as well. But if I fail, you can't blame me. After he warned Zen, Campbell pointed his silver spear towards the snake goddess' feet. He began channeling his energy. Swoosh! The bright silver energy poured down like mercury. Campbell dragged the long spear on the ground and began walking around the snake goddess and the others. After he walked around, a bright silver circle of light surrounded them. The circle was as thick as an arm. Please tell your friends not to step outside the circle of light, Campbell told Zen. Zen was only vaguely aware of what was happening outside. He couldn't quite see them clearly. Fortunately, the Heavenly Obsession civilization artifact was able to instantly decipher what Campbell said. When Zen understood this, he immediately asked the Wing King if they could see a silver circle of light around them. After receiving a positive answer from the Wing King, Zen told him what Campbell said. The Wing King conveyed Zen's message to everyone at once. The treacherous being said that this silver circle of light can protect us. We must not step out of it. As their group saw the numerous large-headed monsters, they were filled with shock. They were even more surprised when they heard what the Wing King just said. Their expressions showed utter confusion. They could not quite comprehend how a small silver circle of light could keep the large-headed treacherous beings at bay. These creatures were almost indestructible. However, they were quickly running out of options. Even if they were quite skeptical about it, all they could do now was to stay inside this circle of light. The large-headed monsters were slowly edging closer towards where they were standing. The nearest monster was only 10 feet away from them. With that, Zen bellowed and then gently shook his spear. With a mighty leap, he rose towards the sky like an eagle. He soared upwards with such an astonishing speed. In a split second, he was hovering in the air like a silver ribbon. Meanwhile, the large-headed monsters that were moving so slowly on the ground rapidly jumped into the air as soon as Zen's body soared upwards. They were like beasts that smelled blood and went into a frenzy. They turned into black shadows and instantly pounced towards Zen. Buzz! Zen clutched the long spear tightly in his right hand. Then, he held it out in front of him and it began to spin at such great speed. It almost looked like a spinning silver millstone. The first large-headed monster to reach his position charged directly at him. It opened its enormous mouth and attempted to bite him. Hey now, Zen sneered. As it drew closer, a mocking smile appeared on Zen's face. With the tip of his silver spear, he drew a silver wheel in the air. It instantly surged towards the monster but it merely passed through its center. The treacherous beings were very tricky to deal with. The main reason was because they could not be easily defeated with ordinary methods. One had to be familiar with their movements and abilities. Even if their bodies were twisted, squeezed, or even stretched into noodle-like figures, they could just easily recover from it. However, the silver energy emanating from Campbell's armor had a miraculous effect on the treacherous beings. Buzz! A ray of silver light streaked across the monster's huge and ugly head. It looked like a sharp weapon leaving a mark at a metal ball. The large-headed monster's oval head sustained a deep cut from the tip of the spear. It fell downwards as it struggled with the serious wound on its head. Swish! Swish! Zen slightly withdrew the silver spear and it swiftly stabbed backwards from under his right arm. Puff! 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 The group heard several gusts of air from above. They saw that the silver spear had shot 4 rays of silver light out consecutively. It looked like 4 silver dragons that accurately pierced through the 4 large-headed monsters behind Zen. The spear light that effectively pierced the monsters extended straight into the distance behind them. It even shot all the way out of the round tray. But in the blink of an eye, the light strangely disappeared. As they watched this intense fight, Zen's companions huddled inside the silver circle of light and were utterly terror-stricken. Fortunately, the large-headed monsters seemed to choose Zen as their main target as soon as Campbell used Zen's body to wage a fierce battle against them. Meanwhile, there were still 6 monsters on the ground. They were moving slowly around the silver circle of light. It looked like they were thoroughly wary and afraid of the circle because they didn't even dare step on it. They were staring at the sky as they moved. Their gaze followed Zen's every movement. They seemed ready to pounce on him as soon as an opportunity presented itself. This silver circle of light is incredibly mystical. The large-headed treacherous beings don't even dare step over it. Squeak! King Yayan exclaimed in its amazement. It couldn't believe how powerful it was. It's not that they don't dare enter it. They are merely disgusted with this kind of energy, the snake goddess uttered. Well, disgust is also rooted from fear, replied the leader of the black-robed men. This silver energy obviously has an extraordinary effect upon the treacherous beings. It's very similar to the energy released by my black river gecko. It was true that the black river gecko raised by the leader of the black-robed men also bore the same effect. However, the black river gecko was too small in size to fight against the treacherous beings. One after another, the large-headed monsters turned into black shadows and pounced at Zen. Nevertheless, it didn't matter how fast the monsters moved or how wide their mouths were. They would easily be pierced through or taken down by the silver spear light. After receiving serious blows from the silver energy, the large-headed monsters were no longer able to recover. They would instantly fall to the ground and struggle for a while. Then they would collapse and lay there motionlessly. Once in a while, a few severely injured monsters would land directly inside the circle of light. The Eternal Realm hunters would quickly move them out of the circle. Unbelievable, that spear is incredibly powerful, Thurston commended out loud. On the other hand, Pearson had a puzzled look upon his face. He asked his companions, these treacherous beings are all at the hostility level. So why is there such a huge gap between their strength and the strength of the one that has possessed Zen? The treacherous being that has possessed Zen's body is not the one that's powerful. Rather, it's the silver energy emanating from the spear and armor, the snake goddess responded solemnly. If we can wield that kind of energy, it will also be very easy for us to kill those large-headed treacherous beings. When they heard this, the others nodded in agreement. If they could control the silver energy as well, they should be able to deal with the treacherous beings effectively too. In such a short span of time, Zen had already killed almost 40 large-headed monsters. He annihilated those powerful monsters as easily as if he was merely slaughtering chickens and sheep. Naturally, everyone's despondent and dejected mood disappeared. Their morale had increased significantly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. They heard a rushing noise near them. The 8 large-headed monsters that had been crawling over not far away also leapt into the air. Zen swung his long spear around. All of a sudden, his calm gaze froze. At that point, the silver spear shot out countless small rays of light. If one viewed this scene from below, it looked like a shower of silver rain. Those large-headed monsters were effortlessly torn into pieces by it. As they were struck by the silver light, they fell straight down. However, 3 more monsters pounced on him from behind as soon as he killed these 8 monsters. The long silver spear in Zen's hand appeared as though it had a soul. With just a light flick, it automatically stabbed 3 times behind him. If he could keep this up without any untoward incident, it would be really easy to kill those monsters. But at that very moment, the silver light on Zen's armor and spear suddenly dimmed. The change in its glow was extremely noticeable. Poof, poof. The first 2 strikes were still able to pierce through 2 of the monsters. Upon the 3rd strike, however, the silver light on his armor and spear disappeared entirely. They noticed that the power of the 3rd strike was far less than that of the previous ones. The monster blocked it with ease. The expression on Zen's face slightly changed when he failed to pierce through the 3rd monster with his spear. Bang! Zen smashed the large-headed monster into the ground forcefully with the shaft of the spear. He managed to do it in the speed of light. But without the massive support of the silver energy, Zen's attack was unable to cause any substantial damage to the monster. As soon as the monster landed on the ground, it immediately bounced right up and charged towards Zen once more. As Zen watched this, he swiftly came down and landed beside the snake goddess and the others. Meanwhile, his spear was already pointed at the silver circle of light. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The long spear appeared as though it was a vacuum that was sucking the light in. It absorbed all of the silver energy in the circle. Once again, the tip of the spear flashed with bright silver light. Meanwhile, the monster was already closing in on Zen. It opened its mouth wide and bared its sharp teeth as if it was determined to swallow Zen whole. Boom! A mark of 8 diagrams exploded directly on the face of the monster. It forcefully pushed it dozens of feet away. It was Fuxi who launched the attack. Campbell, controlling Zen's body, looked back at Fuxi and nodded with thanks. After that, he pointed his long spear at the monster and slaughtered it. Chapter 3604, Builders. Most big-headed monsters were eliminated on the round tray, while 3 or 4 of them were still left wandering aimlessly in the distance. When Zen saw them, he immediately rushed over with the long spear in his hand. As soon as he approached the monsters, several silver spear lights emerged and all of them were instantly killed. After finishing the job, Zen returned and glanced at the crowd indifferently. Then, he suddenly tilted his head and opened his mouth. From Zen's eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, the treacherous being's body continuously flowed out until it formed a shape of a human. Previously, they saw him as an abstract human figure with an extremely odd face. However, when he went out of Zen's body, his form became complete. Every detail on the body was outlined, and he actually possessed a good-looking face. He looked exactly the same as the bronze statue beside the pool. Soon after, Zen's eyes opened, and the glisten in his eyes had finally returned. Zen, you're finally back. Are you okay now? Thank goodness. After killing all of the monsters, they had been thinking about how they could communicate with the treacherous being to make him leave Zen's body. But unexpectedly, he left on his own volition. Don't worry guys, I'm fine now. This is Master Campbell, and he's actually a member of our race, so he has no intention of hurting me, Zen explained with a smile. His name is Campbell, the snake goddess asked as she raised her eyebrows. Then where did he come from? Fuxi asked too. And why did he possess your body? Squeak, King Yayan inquired its own question. Indeed, there were a lot of questions that needed to be answered. Even Zen didn't know all of them, and he desired the answers directly from Campbell himself. Zen just smiled at his companions and turned towards Campbell. A chorus immediately came from his inner world and translated the words. Master Campbell, I actually have a lot of questions. Would you care to answer them? Campbell just glanced at Zen with indifferent eyes and waved his hand. What do you still need? I've already returned your body. You can leave now. After saying that, he softly pointed a finger at Zen. Then, the armor attached to Zen's body was peeled off, and the long spear was also pulled from his hand. Campbell had completely awakened and regained his consciousness. He had been trying for countless of years, and he finally succeeded with the help of Zen's body. 200 treacherous beings that were trapped on the winding road had been tirelessly achieving this goal. They would possess the passers-by on the road, and their final goal was to come to this place, no matter what the cost. Among the rest, he was the first one to succeed in regaining his consciousness and not be eaten by the big-headed monsters. But even though he was overjoyed, he didn't quite reveal his emotions. He didn't say that he didn't want to answer Zen's questions, so Zen still asked him anyway. Master Campbell, are you from the human spirit sect? We, humans, are what you may call the continuation of the human spirits. If there is anything we can do to help you, you can tell us without reservations. Don't give us the cold shoulder, Zen said patiently. Zen wasn't typically the one who wanted to force an answer from others. However, this situation wasn't an ordinary one. It wasn't easy meeting a human spirit, so he couldn't just let an important opportunity like this slip by. Campbell was still looking at Zen nonchalantly. Your physical body has been sufficient. It helped me contact the light of annihilation and kill those treacherous beings. Ultimately, it helped me completely wake up. But it's still not enough. He shook his head as he continued speaking. Well, it has nothing to do with you now, so you don't have to involve yourself with me. The light of annihilation that he mentioned was the silver energy that was attached to the armor and the long spear. It could greatly restrain the treacherous beings, so Campbell couldn't have direct contact with it. That was why he needed a physical body where he could attach himself. His instinct told him that he should look for and choose a strong physical body. Now that he was fully awakened, Zen's body wouldn't suffice anymore. In his eyes, Zen, the snake goddess, Fuxi, and the others who were from the secondary world and at the eternal realm were not qualified enough to get involved with his matters, given their current strength and innate limitations. Well, I still did help you wake up. And I'm not even asking for any reward. I just want some information, Zen insisted and pushed his luck. Although Campbell was quite arrogant, he was still grateful to have returned to his original form. So, he shrugged his shoulders and sighed, sure, go ahead. Then, is this the Jade Pure Realm? Zen asked straightforwardly. The Jade Pure Realm, huh? Technically, you can say that. But this is just like the outer layer. There are several Pure Sky platforms like this in the entire Jade Pure Realm. If you're really looking for the real Jade Pure Realm, go to the Pure Sky platform in that direction. Campbell pointed his finger to the distance. It's 100 times larger than this one. That must be what you're after, he continued. Zen looked at the direction that Campbell pointed to. There was a dense mass of starlight in the area, preventing him from seeing anything clearly. The snake goddess had a similar guess to what Campbell had said. She thought earlier that the Pure Sky platform that they were currently on was a branch of the Jade Pure Realm. Another one, are you from the Instant Civilization? Zen took the opportunity and asked again. Instant Civilization, it was actually Campbell's first time hearing this term, so it was a bit difficult for him to answer. It's the name given to the first civilization that existed in the chaos. In short, it should be the civilization that built the chaos. Zen tried to explain in the easiest way to understand. Campbell quickly understood what he meant. There was a faint smile on his face as he said, going by what you said, then yes, I'm from the Instant Civilization. The chaos that you're talking about was built by us. So it's true. Although Zen already had a hunch, he was still surprised when he heard it directly from Campbell's mouth. That's right. There was a bit of a frown that appeared on Campbell's face. This particular secondary world was built with our greatest efforts, and it was also the last one that we built. Zen was relieved that he had asked the right question. Now, Campbell was starting to tell more about his background. The 200 treacherous beings were called the builders in the human spirit sect. They were the ones who built all of the secondary worlds one after another. After building the chaos, they planned and decided to restart it, so that it could operate on its own. However, just a day before the plan to restart it, a deadly invisible poison floated out and spread from the pure sky platform. They had never thought that they would be caught with the internal strife of the Four Spirits sect. It was too late when they noticed the poison, and they were all instantly killed. After the creatures of the main world died in a secondary world, they turned into treacherous beings that would never die. They took the form of spiritual orbs that wandered aimlessly, using their remaining consciousness. Fortunately, they still possessed strong wills in their hearts. Once they achieved and completed their goals, their chance to return and wake up would be attained. The 200 builders of the human spirit sect lived in this pure sky platform. While they were trapped in the winding road, they strove and struggled to return to this place. When they successfully did that, it was the time that they would completely awaken and regain their consciousness. After regaining their consciousness, the first thing they wanted to do was investigate what happened in the past. How were they killed in an instant? And who was really behind it? Unfortunately, as soon as they regained their consciousness, they were devoured by the big-headed monsters before they could even leave the place. Soon after, they would come back to life on the winding road in the form of treacherous beings. The miserable cycle went on, until Campbell was the first one to succeed. Chapter 3605, Hard to Accept. Campbell's words made Zen's eyes widen in surprise. Based on his tone, it didn't seem as if Campbell knew much about the Four Spirits sect. Zen thought it best to raise another question. Master Campbell, what do you plan to do now? Campbell raised his head to look at the starry sky. Now that I'm awake, I will naturally go back and look for answers on who poisoned us back then. The builders had a relatively high position in the Four Spirits sect and enjoyed a certain level of prestige. They were, after all, the ones whom the Four Spirits sect relied on to expand their territory. To poison such important members of the Four Spirits sect was a serious crime. It was no doubt done by someone with both guts and power. There was a solemn look in Campbell's eyes as he continued to stare at the sky. I would like to know why they stopped us from awakening again, and again, and again. As his words trailed off, he turned to look at Zen. He expected a look of enlightenment, an expression bright with realization, but all Campbell saw was Zen's furrowed brows of worry. The young man's expression made him frown. What's wrong? Campbell asked. Did I say anything wrong? Zen licked his lips as he let out a heavy sigh. Did you never come into contact with anyone from the main world after you were poisoned? Zen asked. Campbell shook his head. No, neither me nor any of my companions have ever met with anyone from the main world. Every single time he came here led by his obsession, he would end up killed by those big-headed monsters which prevented him from waking up completely. So you are unaware of the Four Spirit sect's current situation, Zen murmured, his eyes twinkling with a strange color. Why, what is their current situation? Campbell asked, half puzzled yet also half apprehensive with the look on Zen's face. If the creatures in our chaos want to enter the Three Purities stage, we would need to enter the Eternal Scroll Painting and become Eternal Realm Warriors to do so, Zen began. I built the passage. I know how it works, Campbell replied with a nod. I entered the center of the Eternal Scroll Painting. Campbell's brows rose at Zen's revelation. Then that means you're quite talented and you inherited the origin level bloodline. Congratulations. No wonder your physical strength is excellent. To be able to obtain the origin level bloodline was a very outstanding feat for creatures from secondary worlds. Of course, as a member and a builder of the Four Spirits sect, the origin level bloodline wasn't as big of a deal to Campbell. After all, those talented warriors of the Four Spirits sect all set their minds to get the ancestry level bloodline. Zen, however, was quick to correct him. No, I entered the Eternal Divine Courtyard. This new piece of information made Campbell narrow his eyes at him. Creatures from secondary worlds weren't expected to reach the Eternal Divine Courtyard. Such a feat was incredibly rare. Once a warrior obtained the ancestry level bloodline, that immediately qualified him or her as a member of the Four Spirits sect. Warriors who managed such a feat were usually outstanding and quickly grew powerful under the sect's guidance. Normally, the 10 Directions House of the Human Spirit sect would reach out and immediately try to recruit such amazing talents. Why was Zen here in the Three Purities stage then? Did he fail in the Eternal Divine Courtyard? That couldn't be right. No, it was downright impossible. Only promising geniuses could ever set foot in the Eternal Divine Courtyard. The Four Spirits sect made the test extremely difficult and strict on warriors from secondary worlds. The same couldn't be said for the members of the sect. They could enter the eternal divine courtyard more easily, but that also meant that quite a lot of them suffered the unbearable power of the ancestry-level bloodline, and thus were rejected by the bloodline. However, those from secondary worlds who had already entered the eternal divine courtyard held a greater potential to pass the ancestry-level bloodlines test. Did you enter by invitation? Campbell asked. Invitation, Zen repeated. He shook his head. I got in by myself. What? Campbell remarked in shock. Did he hear that correctly? How in the world were you able to get in by yourself? Are you kidding me? The eternal divine courtyard was the center of the four-spirit sect. There was no way Zen would have been allowed to enter by himself. Zen's next few words would continue to shock Campbell. There was nobody there. The eternal divine courtyard was abandoned, at least that was what the bronze statues told me. Campbell could only shake his head, unwilling to accept Zen's words as fact. He kept silent for a while. Then he said in a firm tone, "You're lying. There's no way the Four Spirits sect would give up on the eternal divine courtyard." "I believe you," Zen told him in what he hoped was a calming tone. The Four Spirits sect would have definitely been unwilling to give the courtyard up, but maybe something happened to them. Like a catastrophe, maybe even a massacre. Campbell froze. Massacre, he repeated. Zen was about to ask him if he was okay when he suddenly let out a loud, maniacal laugh as if he had just heard the funniest joke in the world. A massacre. The Four Spirits sect was the sole dominant power in the main world. Sure, there were a few creatures and races that were quite powerful, but they were nothing compared to the Four Spirits sect. After his less than sane laughter, Campbell threw Zen an aggressive glare. Who can massacre our Four Spirits sect? Zen continued to use his calm voice to talk to an obviously distressed Campbell. Yes, the Four Spirits sect was indeed powerful, he began. However, the human, snake, bird, and monkey spirits weren't usually united, correct? Wouldn't there be any internal strife which led them to kill each other? You said it yourself. The Four Spirits sect was so powerful that no one would ever dare attack you. Nobody, of course, save for the people within the sect itself, Zen declared. I met the brush wielder. He told me that there was some sort of internal strife within the Four Spirits sect which led to a split up. Quote. Zen's words were sent and translated through the heavenly obsession civilization in his inner world. They eventually reached the ears of the group of people who then conveyed them through a song. His words managed to convince Campbell. After all, it was the most viable reason. Who would ever dare attack the powerful world builders? Who would ever dare poison them? There was no way some external force would be stupid enough to do such a thing. So that meant the culprit was someone from the inside. An outsider would never succeed in poisoning 200 world builders unnoticed. The snake goddess, Fuxi, Eastern Emperor Tai, the eternal realm hunters, and the black-robed men couldn't understand since Zen's voice was directly transmitted to his inner world. It was better this way since there was some information that couldn't be revealed to everyone. All they knew was that there was a bit of singing, and then Campbell suddenly became very upset, so they naturally wanted to know what happened. No, Campbell declared. I do not believe this. I will go there myself. Denial was always the first stage in grief. No matter how rational Zen's words had been, Campbell did not want to believe them. He wouldn't believe unless he confirmed it with his own two eyes. Whoosh! He immediately stamped his feet on one side of the pure sky platform. From there, a series of patterns flashed on the ground. Soon enough, a strangely shaped collection of houses suddenly floated into the air. The house on the helm was incredibly small and only featured a door that could accommodate a single person at most. There were a total of 5 houses, and each house was twice the size of the one that preceded it. Master Campbell, Zen called out to Campbell. Where are you going? As a builder, I naturally have a path that could take me to the main world. There is no need to follow me. Creatures from secondary worlds would have difficulty traveling in the main world without undergoing transformation, Campbell answered just as he pushed the door open. Crack, boom, he had just taken a step inside the threshold when a great force shook the door. Campbell tried to grab the door frame out of instinct, but it only ended up with him thrown into the air and landing over 10 miles away, with both his hands and feet also stretching for the same distance. Fortunately, Campbell was in the form of a treacherous being and was able to withstand the blow. Chapter 3606, The Black Head. Campbell's body had been stretched out, so it took some time for him to recover and turn back to his human shape. After he could move properly, he headed back for the door, but as he did, his expression darkened. The exit had been blasted into pieces, the entire passageway had been destroyed. Is this some kind of trap set up a long time ago? Campbell asked in a low voice. Only the Four Spirit sect, or to be exact, only some members of the Human Spirit sect knew about the secret passage to the main world. Someone had blatantly destroyed the secret passage. The traitor must be someone from the Four Spirit sect, or to be exact, the Human Spirit sect. This proved Zen right. This place is so close to the abstruse energy world. Can you leave by going up? Zen asked Campbell as he pointed at the sky. Looking up, he felt the abstruse energy world was so close, as though it was within his reach. Campbell glared at Zen. Don't be stupid, take that path if you want to court death. The force field that lingered above the Jade Pure Realm had actually been set up by Campbell and his companions, so he knew the risks. If that's the case, then I'm afraid you have no choice but to pass through the road controlled by the Element Spirit Civilization, Zen said with a shrug. Of course I know that, Campbell snapped impatiently. The path they were supposed to take, the one that had been destroyed, was actually a secret shortcut. The usual bridge between the chaos and the abstruse energy world was the road controlled by the Element Spirit Civilization. But the Element Spirit Civilization won't let you pass, Zen warned. The Element Spirit Civilization, are they powerful? Campbell asked. At the mention of any of the creatures in the chaos, Campbell's expression would change a little, from scornful to condescending. No matter how powerful the creatures in the chaos were, Campbell usually didn't take them seriously. However, Zen was an exception. After all, Zen had been to the Eternal Divine Courtyard and passed the test of the ancestry-level bloodline. It's the strongest civilization on the other shore. They were the first civilization after the chaos was created, Zen explained patiently. There's no way we can defeat them in this condition, and they won't let you pass. I can't defeat them, Campbell asked, eyebrow raised dubiously. Zen glanced at Campbell hesitantly. I'm not sure. Well, you have killed Les before you woke up. Is Les a member of the Element Spirit Civilization? Even after awakening, Campbell still retained his memories from when he was still asleep. Naturally, he remembered how he had killed Les. In the eyes of Campbell, Les was indeed powerful, but he still triumphed over him easily when he shrank him into oblivion. Yes, it is said that he is one of the three backbones of the Element Spirit Civilization. Campbell smiled slightly. Then they're not worth taking seriously, either. Although his real body had already perished, his body as a treacherous being was a great weapon. Naturally, he was confident he could defeat anyone from the Element Spirit Civilization. After all, he did kill one of their leaders. Just then, they heard maniacal laughter burst out from somewhere on the Pure Sky platform. It was as if countless people were laughing crazily. Then, they sensed a terrible aura in the air. Someone was speaking Sanskrit. Campbell's expression darkened. It seemed he could understand the voice. Heavenly Obsession Civilization, help me decipher the Sanskrit words. Zen cried as he transmitted the laughter to his inner world. It didn't take long for the core of the Heavenly Obsession Civilization to translate the noise. Not worth taking seriously. As a mere world builder who wasn't even accepted by the 10 Directions house, how dare you speak recklessly now? Ha ha ha. From the bottom of the Pure Sky platform, the huge black head suddenly reared its unsettling face, eyes and mouth wide open. That was where the waves of laughter were coming from. As it laughed, it slowly moved along the bottom of the Pure Sky platform until it reached the edge of the platform. It was a black head that was 10,000 feet tall. It had no body, but instead there were many oval spheres under it. Zen recognized these spheres. They were the large-headed monsters that they had encountered before. Whenever the large-headed monsters were killed by Campbell, they would disappear and revive in another place. This was the case with all the treacherous beings. However, Zen never expected that the place where these monsters were revived was right underneath the Pure Sky platform. These monsters all huddled under the massive black head like grapes on a vine, rendering the black head even more terrifying. When the snake goddess, Fuxi, Eastern Emperor Tai, Yasemin and the others saw the huge creature, their faces turned pale. The resentment level. It's the resentment level treacherous being. The leader of the black-robed men cried. Although the treacherous beings were divided into 3 levels, with the hatred level being the strongest, no one had ever actually seen a hatred level treacherous being. Thus, the resentment level treacherous being was already regarded as the most formidable one. Even the 3 Eternal Realm Hunters bore serious expressions. Judging from the aura released by the black head, all the trouble they had experienced before amounted to nothing compared to this moment. Who are you? Campbell asked, raising his head. The treacherous being must have been formed by the creature of the main world after it died. The more powerful the creature was, the more formidable its treacherous being would be. The creature, which formed the resentment level treacherous being, must have been extremely powerful when it was alive. The black head howled in laughter. You don't need to know who I am, it said in Sanskrit. You just need to know that you should have stayed on the winding road. Buzz. The blackhead's eyes began to flicker with red light which shot out after accumulating to a certain extent. Run, Zen cried. When the crowd saw 2 rays of red light shooting towards them, they all dodged to the side. Swish. Fortunately, they were able to dodge in time. The red light swept over and past them. Campbell, too, was able to jump out of harm's way. Only one man in the black robe was a split second too slow. Before he could even scream, the red light flashed through him. At first, he stood perfectly still. Then, the man in the black robe collapsed into a pile of black soot. Everyone stared at the scene in horror. How could they not be seized with fear, knowing that one touch of the L light would burn them to dust? Having dodged the red light, Campbell stretched out his hand. The armor, which had been scattered on the ground, dashed straight for Zen. Even the spear pulsated with energy. Crack, crack, crack. In less than 3 seconds, the armor had been completely attached onto Zen's body. Kill him, Campbell ordered Zen. Zen gripped the spear tightly and nodded. Raising his hand, he jabbed the spear towards the monster in the distance. A silver light shot out from the tip of the spear. The blackhead had no form of defenses whatsoever, so the light of annihilation pierced through it cleanly. However, once the silver light faded, there was but a small hole on the blackhead. Compared to its overall size, the piercing was but a mosquito bite. However, the light of annihilation on the spear in Zen's hand had completely dimmed. Chapter 3607, A Smiling Man. Zen held up the dimmed spear and then glanced at Campbell. With the help of the light of annihilation, the latter had killed many hostility-level treacherous beings just now. Now the light of annihilation had dimmed. The spear might be of extraordinary quality, but it was still nothing more than a piece of scrap metal in the face of the treacherous being. Everyone looked at the now blunt tip of the spear and then turned to look at Campbell. That stone, Campbell suddenly said. What? A strange look appeared on Zen's face. Campbell didn't explain anything but gently pointed at Zen's chest. A small bump appeared out of nowhere on his ribs. It was as if there was something extra there, something that didn't belong. Then the bump moved along his esophagus and quickly reached his throat and then his mouth. Then it was involuntarily spat out. Only then everyone saw that it was a cubic stone with several cracks on its surface. As for Zen, as soon as the stone had moved in his body, he had started to recall that it had been taken out from Les' body. At that time, Campbell had not awakened. He had merely said that this stone was called the Holy Stone, and then forcefully stored it inside Zen's body. Neither Zen nor the primeval Lord of Heaven knew why he had done so. Les had used this holy stone to unfold the protective sphere, but once the protective sphere was smashed, the energy contained within the stone should have been exhausted. From the way they saw, the stone was all its name suggested. A stone. Can this stone be useful? Zen asked. As creatures of the secondary world, you naturally do not know the mysteries of this stone, Campbell remarked as he pointed at the holy stone. Buzz. To their immense surprise, the light of annihilation immediately burst forth from the holy stone like water from a fountain. When Zen saw this, his eyebrows rose. He quickly grabbed the stone in one hand and held the spear in the other. The spear was covered with several grooves like drainage paths. As soon as the light of annihilation gushed out of the holy stone, it quickly filled every single centimeter of those grooves. Perhaps the blackhead felt the threat of the light of annihilation when this began to happen because its reaction was rather fierce. The red lights in its eyes shone once more. Whoosh! 2 beams crisscrossed against the ground and swept towards Zen's head. Before anyone could warn him, Zen himself jumped and fell to the ground sideways. With the help of the silver spear, he then jumped high into the air like a nimble monkey and fell sharply once more, rolling over again and again to get out of the beam's path. The fatal red lights followed him all the way, but he managed to dodge them every single time they reached near. The others merely stood in different corners and positions, afraid of being hit. They weren't fast enough to dodge the beams. The red lights chased after Zen for 2 circles before they finally dimmed. However, the blackhead was not going to let go of Zen so easily. After all, the light of annihilation was extremely lethal to it. Buzz. The red lights in its eyes began to accumulate once again. At that moment, Zen, finding his chance, spiraled up. The long spear in his hand shook violently and he pointed it towards the huge blackhead. Swish! The silver light of annihilation turned into a sharp spear light and rushed straight for the blackhead. Compared to the big-headed monsters they had just faced, the blackhead was enormous and therefore, rather clumsy, which meant that for Zen, it was a sitting duck. The spear light hit the blackhead right between the eyebrows. A big hole appeared where it had struck and the black head immediately disappeared in the world behind the pure sky platform. Zen and his companions carefully observed how the black head would react now. After being hit by the light of annihilation, the hostility level treacherous beings had disappeared directly. The effect had been surprisingly good. And if luck were on their side, then this would also be the case with the black head, and Zen's spear strike would be enough to kill this resentment level treacherous being as well. However, the black head shook rapidly in the air, and the circular hole between its eyebrows quickly began to heal. At the same time, two beams of red lights shot out from its eyes towards Zen once again. Zen's pupils shrank, and he began to dodge like a nimble rabbit. Somehow, he was faster than those light beams. The others looked on. They were facing a formidable enemy. The pure sky platform itself was not that big. Even if the black head did not deliberately aim at them, there were chances that they could be hit by a stray beam which could take their lives. As Zen sprinted along the pure sky platform, the holy stone in his palm was still emitting large amounts of the light of annihilation. Seizing an opportunity that he got during one of his jumps, Zen once again thrust his spear towards the black head. The spear accurately reached its mark and pierced the black head, but just as before, the wound healed quickly, and the resentment-level treacherous being was unharmed. I am afraid that the spear doesn't work. What do you mean? Can't the silver energy kill that black head? No, and we'd better run away now. There's no need for us to lose our lives in the effort to do so. Everyone had thought that with the silver energy, Zen would be able to kill the resentment-level treacherous being, or at least he would be able to seriously injure it. It was beyond their imagination and also rather fearsome that even 2 strikes by the spear didn't do a single darn thing to the black head. Master Campbell, why is this happening? Zen asked. I don't know, Campbell replied hesitantly as he shook his head. As nothing more than a builder of the worlds, he was not very good at fighting. He did have some level of knowledge. He knew that after the creatures of the main world died, they would become treacherous beings and fear the light of annihilation. However, his knowledge did not extend to a thorough understanding of the division of strength of those treacherous beings. Seeing the perplexed look on Campbell's face, Zen knew that it would be a waste of time to push him for answers. The man sincerely didn't know. Also, since Zen couldn't defeat the resentment-level treacherous being, they had to leave. He shouted to his companions, "Look! I can't hurt this thing. Let's move towards the door and leave this place as soon as possible." The men in black robes moved the fastest when they heard that. They had been making up their minds to escape from this place for a long while now. By the time Zen had finished shouting, several of them were already at the door. The man who was at the front grabbed the door and tried to open it, but it didn't move at all. He shouted, "The door's locked." Hearing that, the other men behind him became anxious. They rushed forward, grabbed the edge of the door and pulled it out fiercely, as if they could tear it into opening, but the door still remained tightly shut. Very soon, the leader of the men in black robes, the Eternal Realm Hunters, Fuxi and the Snake Goddess all put their backs into an effort to open the door. However, the door seemed to have been locked by some kind of thurgy, and it remained unmoved. Ha ha ha, when the blackhead saw their valiant but failed efforts, it let out a mocking laugh. Dead end. There is no return from this point forth. Since you broke into this place, you won't leave it alive. Previously, the blackhead had spoken in Sanskrit, but this time, it was actually speaking in human tongue. Buzz. As soon as it had finished its sentence, the red lights in its eyes accumulated once again and were about to shoot towards the door. This time, they would have burned everyone since they were already accumulated there in a group. Whoosh, whoosh, 2 spear lights shot out and hit the bull's eyes, or rather, the head's eyes. Both of its eyes had now been replaced by 2 gaping holes. Its eyes were gone, and the red lights naturally dissipated. This was a clever decision, but it was still not enough. Even losing both of its eyes did not seem to be a problem for it. The 2 holes quickly healed and became a pair of eyes once again. The head chuckled malevolently, and red lights began to brew within its eyes once again. Whoosh, whoosh, Zen raised his hand and stabbed the blackhead's eyes with the light beams once again. The blackhead seemed pissed at this. The strongest trump card in its pocket, if it could have any, was the dazzling lights in its eyes. If Zen kept on poking it in the eyes, it wouldn't have any way of fighting back. Although it didn't hurt, it was still extremely inconvenient. Just as Zen had pinned down the blackhead, Campbell floated towards the door. As a builder of the world, Campbell was not too strong, but was very familiar with the chaos, the other shore, and everything else that mattered to the construction of this place. When everyone saw him, they all moved aside. Campbell reached out his hand and pressed it against the door. He rubbed it 2 times, as if to get a feel of it, and then said something that shocked them all. Something's very wrong with this door. The snake goddess, Fuxi and the others couldn't understand what he meant. Poking the black head with the spear light once again, Zen turned around and asked, "What do you mean?" "The door has been replaced," Campbell replied. "So many years have passed. Maybe the original door was rotten, so it had to be replaced," Zen suggested. However, Campbell shook his head. "No, it was just replaced. There." He pointed to another pure sky platform in the distance. A person was standing on that pure sky platform, who looked somehow exactly like the black head. When the man felt the gazes of Campbell and Zen turn towards him from afar, the corners of his mouth curled up, revealing a strange smile. The black head also raised the corners of its mouth, revealing the same smile as the man's. They were one. Chapter 3608, General. Upon seeing Zen's and Campbell's gaze shift somewhere else, all the others followed and looked towards the pure sky platform. When their eyes met the man on the pure sky platform, they were shocked. "Someone is there. That person looks the same as the black head." Who was he? Those who could stay in the Jade Pure Realm were by no means ordinary people. "Do you know him, Master Campbell?" Zen asked. Campbell stared at the pure sky platform as if he was searching his mind for memories of this person. On the other hand, the man on the pure sky platform flashed a strange smile, and so did the black head. He stayed silent, allowing Campbell to think harder. As a world builder, Campbell focused on building one world after another, not caring about matters of the main world. When they encountered any trouble before building a world, they only needed to call the 10 Directions House. The powerful warriors sent by the 10 Directions House would tidy up the messes for them. Perhaps the ones that the world builders had the most contact with were the people of the 10 Directions House. After he traced back his memories, something suddenly crossed Campbell's mind. He opened his eyes wide and pointed at the person opposite him. "I remember now. You are a member of the 10 Directions House. You are General Johnny." Generals were powerful warriors in the 10 Directions House. There were many troubles in the main world, large or small. If the world builders occupied the territory of some races in building a world, or if they needed to destroy the gathering places of some barbaric races, they would need the 10 Directions House to help them. Under normal circumstances, they would not need generals to show up since the strength of ordinary warriors of the 10 Directions House was enough to solve these problems. Once, a group of 200 of them encountered the attack of the tail butterfly race. The 200 builders were trapped, and the 10 Directions House sent 3 groups of warriors in succession, but they all returned in failure. In the end, the 10 Directions House had to send 6 generals. It was Campbell's first time seeing a general of the 10 Directions House, and this Johnny was the leader of the group at the time. The 6 generals' strength was astonishing. All the members of the tail butterfly race were wiped out skillfully. Although Johnny had left a deep impression on Campbell, they had only met once. The black head had Gianni's face. Campbell remembered it now. "General Johnny, what exactly happened? Why had someone dared to kill us? I heard that even the eternal divine courtyard has been abandoned. What happened inside the Four Spirits sect?" Campbell demanded answers one by one. Campbell had been attacked by the big head monsters. He was also attacked by the black head that was suspected to be controlled by Johnny. However, in his heart, he still regarded the human spirit sect as his home and the 10 Directions House as something trustworthy. He could only believe a portion of Zen's words, and he wanted to verify it with Johnny. "Ha ha ha." Johnny made a series of sounds and began to speak Sanskrit. "If I were you, I would kill all of them and then commit suicide. At least, the Winding Road is a safe place where you can still live." Zen's and Campbell's faces both darkened at Gianni's words. Campbell asked again, "What do you mean by that? You are just a builder. Why do you have so many questions?" Johnny scolded him. "You just need to do as I say. I order you as a general of the 10 Directions House." Some things had already been arranged in the first chaotic era. The reason why Johnny appeared was only to get rid of the variables to their plan. The world builders weren't strong, but they were too familiar with the chaos, thus, they could be considered one of the variables. That was why they had arranged many hostility-level treacherous beings here. Every time any world builder entered this place, they would be thrown back to the Winding Road by the hostility-level treacherous beings. Campbell had won the battle with the hostility-level treacherous beings this time, which alerted Johnny. The generals of the 10 Directions House were existences enjoying high status in the main world. A single word from them often determined either the life or death of a large race. With Campbell's status, he could only obey their orders unconditionally. There was no way he dared to disobey. "Kill them and commit suicide," Campbell murmured. Zen looked at Campbell calmly while he held the long spear in his hand tight. The silver-white light of annihilation slowly circulated the pattern of the spear's shaft, making its way to the tip. The light of annihilation could kill Campbell, who was in the form of a treacherous being, although he had already awakened. Master Campbell, your wish was to wake up. Do you still want to return to the winding road, to become a soulless treacherous being and drift through your life? Zen asked. Campbell glanced at Zen and then looked at Johnny in the distance. He thought for a while before staring at Johnny with firmness. General Johnny, I can return to the winding road, but please answer my questions first. Who on earth killed us, and why? A look of contempt appeared in Gianni's eyes, the same with the eyes of the blackhead. Who do you think you are? Do you think you have become a somebody after you slept for so many years? Buzz, buzz. Gianni's eyes began to flicker into a blood-red light, so did the blackhead's eyes. It was about to launch another wave of attacks, but before the red light could shoot out, pop, pop. The two beams of silver spear radiance had once again pierced through its eyes. Zen placed the long spear back on his shoulder and said, more than 1,000 chaotic eras have passed, and perhaps forces like the 10 Directions House and the human spirit sect no longer exist. It's better to find clues by yourself than to ask this guy. Zen's voice came from his inner world. His voice wasn't loud, but Johnny had heard him through the black head. In Gianni's eyes, the others were all irrelevant creatures except for the indestructible world builders. Although Zen had pierced through the eyes of the blackhead many times, Johnny thought it was only the light of annihilation which achieved such a feat, not Zen's strength. Ha ha ha, you think you can leave now? Johnny asked teasingly. You wouldn't know unless we give it another try, right? The silver light on Zen's right hand began to radiate again. A bug full of itself. I'll let you have another try. As Johnny spoke, he took 2 steps toward the edge of the pure sky platform. Round balls began to bulge from the skin around his neck as if eggs were moving from within. At the same time, the big head monsters began to shake below the black head. They started merging and fused into a large mass that spread in all directions, gradually forming the body of a black giant. The black giant was over 100,000 feet tall and could cross the huge pure sky platform in just 10 steps. In the distance, Johnny also tore his clothes as he trembled slightly. One after another, cracks appeared on the surface of his body, giving rise to countless eyes opening all over his body. The black giant and Johnny moved in sync. Eyes also appeared on the surface of the black giant's body, and as they opened, the blood-red light began to gather again. Chapter 3609, Seized. The red light glinting in so many pairs of eyes instilled fear in everyone. This red light was fatal. Anyone exposed to it would immediately be reduced to a pile of dust. How could they escape a weapon that was being released and concentrated on them by so many eyes? Back off. Zen's face darkened at the sight of these eyes. The Wing King, Fuxi, the Snake Goddess, the Eternal Realm Hunters, and the people in black robes quickly stayed away from the door and retreated towards the edge of the pure sky platform. They were unable to escape the red light, but there was still some room for them to dodge its attacks after they had distanced themselves from the black giant. Even Campbell retreated along with them. Zen was the only one to have moved forward instead of retreating. For the safety of the others, he had to lure the black giant to the other side of the pure sky platform and finish it off. Buzz, 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 buzz. The presence of so many eyes took the black giant a longer time to accumulate the red light. And Zen had already seized this opportunity to launch an attack. Break, Zen shouted, jumping up. His spear spun once, and came at the black giant's body. Swish, 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 swish. Zen had earlier been afraid of using up the light of annihilation in the holy stone, which was why he had tried his best to launch as accurate an attack as possible. He didn't dare waste any light. And now that he had burnt his bridges, Zen couldn't care less about anything else. Rays of spear radiance whooshed through space and headed straight for the black giant. The black head moved at a snail's pace in the beginning, an easy target for Zen. Now that it had a body, it was a complete entity, and under Gianni's control, it was more agile than Zen had imagined it would be. The spear radiance that Zen had sent out was like a white glowing net, covering the vital parts of the black giant's body. With this round of attack, Zen planned to pierce through at least 20 pairs of the black giant's eyes. But the moment the spear radiance approached it, the black giant took a single step to the side. Pop, 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 pop. The spear radiance pierced through the black giant's body and created dozens of holes, but hit only one eye on its chest. Zen was not surprised. Johnny was by no means mediocre as a warrior from the 10 Directions House. One didn't earn Campbell's respect by being merely mediocre. It would be strange if Zen could finish off such an opponent with too much ease. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Zen had pierced through only one of the black giant's eyes, but more eyes opened on its body. The red light that had accumulated for a long time within them spurted out of them. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. About 40 red light columns shot out from the black giant's body. As the black giant continued to spin, the red light columns shot out randomly in all directions. The light columns didn't disappear until they had extended to outside the pure sky platform. No one could escape it. Disperse, the Wing King shouted as a warning. His wings flapped in the air, his strange posture making him look like water flowing towards the light columns. Fuxi, the snake goddess, Eastern Emperor Tai, and the others used different theurgies to dodge the light columns. Squeak, squeak. King Yayan's tiny size was an advantage that allowed it to escape easily. But no one knew where light columns would go or where they would emerge from. Sometimes, a light column seemed to be hurtling somewhere but would suddenly change direction without warning. King Yayan was unfortunately unable to avoid the red light and was hit in the legs. Its legs had already turned to ashes by the time it jumped up. Pearson stretched out a hand as he saw King Yayan fall backwards. A thin, almost invisible, spider thread wrapped around King Yayan's body, lifting it up. Pearson managed to save King Yayan's life now. But yet another column of red light rose from his side and swept up towards him. He only had half his body left now, and his other half turned to dust. Fortunately for Pearson, his body was special, having been originally woven with spider threads. His body hissed after losing half of it, following which, the disappeared half of his body returned to him, woven by the spider threads. However, he was much shorter and paler than before. The men in black robes were facing even worse. The leader still had the power to protect himself. But his men almost had no power to resist the red light columns. If they weren't careful enough, the red light columns would find them and turn them into piles of dust. The leader tried his best to save his men while dodging the columns himself, but how would he make it in the face of so many red light columns coming his way? 3 men in black robes had died in seconds. Whoosh! Zen sprinted forward for a while before a column came for him. He lowered his body and then rolled upwards into the air. Whoosh! The spear radiance transformed from the light of annihilation hit the black giant's legs, catching and decimating an eye on its leg. Zen rose into the air again after killing the red eye. Before long, he rose tens of thousands of feet into the air to reach the same height as the black giant's head. The black giant looked at Zen and was about to send out a red light column when Zen's long spear began to shake and spear radiance once again shot out at the giant. Pop, 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 pop. Zen fell down. Silver spear radiance continued to pierce through the eyes on the giant's body. Although the black giant's eyes would regrow, Zen would try his best to destroy them in order to reduce the number of red light columns and also ease the pressure on the others. On the other pure sky platform, Johnny rolled his eyes when he saw Zen jumping up and down like a flea. The human was quite fast, but that was just how the average person saw and understood it. Zen was able to launch a series of attacks around the black giant because Johnny hadn't taken him seriously. What an annoying bug, Johnny exclaimed, and then, he suddenly raised his hand. The black giant wasn't slower than Johnny just because of its huge size. In fact, the two of them moved almost in unison. Johnny looked at the void before him and remained silent for a few seconds. He then reached out in the air suddenly, grabbing at it like he was catching a fly. The black giant's right hand was doing the same thing at an incredibly high speed. Zen concentrated on piercing through the eyes, but he was also on guard against the black giant's hand. But he was astonished, for he had never thought that the black giant, who he had assumed to be clumsy because of its huge size, could be so fast. By the time he realized that the giant's hand was coming for him, it was too late. The black giant had already scooped him up in its hand. It's over now, you can go to perdition. Diani's voice sounded from the black giant's mouth. He was speaking the human language. Fuxi, who was still dodging the red light columns in the distance, heard him. And so did the snake goddess and the others. They began to panic when they saw that the black giant had seized Zen. Buzz. The black giant also had an eye in its palm, and before long, the red light in it burst out of it. Chapter 3610, A Human-Shaped Coral. As soon as Zen was caught in the palm of the black giant, he tried to break free using his long spear. However, the strength of the black giant was astonishing. No matter how hard Zen struggled, it didn't budge even an inch. It continued gripping Zen's body, rendering him motionless. Buzz, buzz. The red light was activated again. This time, it was going to aim at Zen. Zen's eyes widened as he saw the red light shining upon him. It instantly drowned and engulfed him before he could even react. No, Zen, dang it, it was too late. Zen, don't die. The red light that shot out from the black giant's palm was so deadly that it could instantly turn almost everything into dust. When the snake goddess, Fuxi, and the others saw how the red light engulfed Zen, they were all terrified. Even Zen could be turned into dust with its power. Moreover, with the monstrous grip of the black giant, there was no way that he escaped. Even the 3 Eternal Realm hunters fell silent as they saw the scene. There was no doubt that they thought so highly of Zen. He was the only reason why they got all the way here. That was why they didn't expect that he would end up dying in this miserable way. As they realized that even Zen could fall this way, they thought that they might also meet their end pretty soon. The leader of the black-robed men stood there in a daze. He was obviously in a state of shock, but his thick robe prevented others from clearly seeing his expression. Soon after, the black giant slowly opened its palm. There, everyone saw the silver armor, the long spear, and some black ashes mixing with them. On the other pure sky platform, Johnny sneered as he saw the scene. He then tilted his hand that was stretched out slightly. At the same time, the black giant that was under Gianni's control also tilted its right hand. Then, the armor, spear, and the clump of black ashes slid down from its palm and fell to the ground. Seeing this, Campbell clenched his fist and bit his lip. He struggled so hard to complete his awakening, but now he was again on the verge of being killed without finding anything about the truth from the past. Thump, thump, the black giant started walking, and its eyes were once again filled with the deadly red lights. At the same time, Johnny spoke in Sanskrit. As I said earlier, it would have been less troublesome for you if you just killed yourself. Now, it's too late for that. Since you wait for me to act, I won't let you die so easily. Well, I can't totally eliminate you, but I can change your will. That way, the possibility of your awakening will be reduced, and you shall live in pain for eternity. Just when the black giant walked past the armor and the spear, the pile of ashes scattered on the ground began to move slowly. The scattered ashes seemed like thousands of ants that gathered bit by bit. Then, in no time, they formed into a small pyramid, which was about 10 inches high. On the surface of the pyramid, bright red blood slowly gushed out. The blood emitted a strange and powerful aura. As the aura quickly spread, everyone's attention was attracted to it. What on earth is that? Campbell looked at the red blood on the pyramid of ashes behind the black giant. His eyes were filled with confusion as he tried to discern what it really was. The snake goddess, Fuxi, the Eternal Realm hunters, and the men in black robes all stared blankly at the blood that grew out from the ashes. It was slowly taking a form of a plant's root, extending upward little by little. As it gradually formed, it almost looked like a blood coral in the sea. What the heck? Johnny walked forward and stopped at the edge of the pure sky platform. He also started staring at the transforming blood that caught everyone's attention. Then, he immediately felt a familiar aura coming from it. The ancestry-level bloodline, he thought to himself. Before Zen entered the 3 purities stage, he got a hold of the ancestry-level bloodline. It dwelled in his body and gave him powerful, and sometimes, odd abilities. Johnny was also familiar with the power of the ancestry-level bloodline, but he didn't know what ability this was. Why was there a tremendous amount of aura from it? Johnny thought all about it and became more confused. What is this growing blood-red coral? Don't tell me. Before Johnny could finish his thoughts, the blood-red coral sort of sped up its transformation. It continued to grow until finally forming a human-shaped coral. As the human-shaped coral stood on top of the pyramid of ashes, it suddenly started absorbing all of the ashes beneath it. At the same time, the human-shaped coral also reached out and grabbed both the silver armor and the long spear on the ground. The armor quickly clung to the surface of its body and it held the long spear in its hand. Finally, the cubic stone wrapped with cracks returned to its hand, and the light of annihilation began to flow in its hand. Buzz, buzz. In an instant, the armor and spear restored their silver luster. What is this kind of monster? Johnny couldn't believe what he was seeing. He already turned into ashes, but he could still return to his original shape. Is this Zen's ability? Everyone was in a daze as if seeing a miracle unfolding in their eyes again. During the battle at the Pear Hill, everyone clearly witnessed the prowess of Zen's ability. He could change into almost anything and suppress even the most powerful enemies. But even so, no one expected this time that he would just rise from the ashes as if nothing happened. They knew how powerful he was, but they still couldn't figure out how his ability worked. Everyone who was witnessing Zen's surprising ability was even more shocked. That included Campbell, who was still filled with disbelief. Those who had been baptized by the ancestry-level bloodline were known to be very powerful. Even being turned into ashes wouldn't kill Zen. Johnny was gazing at the scene through the black giant for a long time now, but he still didn't understand what was going on. He didn't know that the blood that transformed into the human-shaped coral was the ancestry-level bloodline itself. He grew pissed at the thought that Zen completely withstood his strength and power. I don't know what you have experienced in the eternal divine courtyard. Honestly, with such a unique ability, you're qualified to join the 10 Directions house. Unfortunately, you were not born at the right time. Johnny lashed out as he slapped the ground with his hand. Then, the black giant did the same and slapped the human-shaped coral on the ground. Buzz, buzz, the deadly red light burst out from the black giant's palm and enveloped the human-shaped coral. In the distance, the snake goddess took a deep breath and focused her eyes at the palm of the giant without blinking. Then, the red light gradually dissipated. At the same time, the human-shaped coral also disappeared on the ground. Soon after, everyone noticed that red corals were flickering on the surface of the black giant's arm. It was like they formed several meridians extending from its wrist up to its shoulder. In addition to the red corals, there were also white bolts of lightning that flashed from time to time. It turned out that these were the light of annihilation. Immediately after, the red and white lights intertwined and spread along its entire arm. In just a flash, its humongous arm collapsed. Because Johnny was directly linked with the black giant, he instantly felt the pain in his right arm with the collapse of the giant's arm. Arg! What did he do? He let out a painful scream as his face contorted. Meanwhile, the red and white lights continued their assault and drilled into the body of the black giant this time. Johnny quickly held his chest as he felt like there was a piping hot iron stirring up his internal organs. Buzz, buzz, buzz. With the power of the red and white lights, the giant's body collapsed and disappeared too. Finally, they aimed and drilled into its head. No, no, no. Johnny clearly saw what the lights were after this time. He screamed furiously as he started feeling a sharp and piercing sensation in his skull. Unfortunately for Johnny, he couldn't just undo his link with the black giant. It was purposely made in complexity, so it would take time to break it. With that, he had no choice but to endure the severe pain brought by the red and white lights. Chapter 3611, Another Accident. Gianni's wail echoed for a few seconds. At last, the black giant had finally collapsed. Its huge body completely disappeared, and a human-shaped coral slowly descended from midair. When it reached the ground, its armor and spear fell off with a loud clatter. Everyone stared at the human-shaped coral uneasily. Could this be Zen? Not long after, strands of tissue and muscle started to grow on the human-shaped coral. They intertwined with each other to form muscles and bones, and then layers of flesh rapidly formed, till finally the human-shaped coral transformed back into Zen. When she realized it was indeed Zen, the snake goddess sighed in relief. Just now, she had been so nervous that she didn't realize she was holding her breath. Now, she could rest easy. The 3 Eternal Realm Hunters' jaws dropped in shock. They could not understand what was going on. They had seen many unique and magical creatures in their time, but they had never encountered such a powerful creature with such a strange form. Campbell was the first to step forward. Back then, on the winding road, he had instinctively chosen Zen's physical body because he had a feeling that Zen was stronger than the people around him. After awakening, Campbell knew he made the right choice. After all, Zen was a talent who could be chosen to enter the eternal divine courtyard. However, even now Campbell kept discovering that he constantly underestimated Zen. Zen's bloodline power must have been far stronger than he ever imagined. Your ability comes from the life quadrant of the ancestry-level bloodline, right? Such a powerful recovery ability may be the combination of several abilities in the life quadrant. You might even be a general of the 10 Directions house. Campbell exclaimed excitedly. In his eyes, the generals of the 10 Directions house were invincible. And it was true. No matter what trouble the world builders encountered, as long as the 10 Directions house sent their generals out, there was no problem that couldn't be solved. This was also the reason why Campbell was so respectful to Johnny. The life quadrant, Zen thought for a moment. Maybe. When he was enveloped in the red light, he felt the ancestry-level bloodline surging within him. The ancestry-level bloodline was not under Zen's control. At the beginning, it analyzed the information contained in the fluctuation and passed it to him. When he came into contact with any energy, the ancestry-level bloodline would also analyze it and then gave him the energy to restrain it. However, over time, the ancestry-level bloodline started to become cold to him. Now, if it wasn't a fatal threat, it wouldn't offer any help. Just now, Zen fought the black giant head-on because he wanted to activate the ancestry-level bloodline. Campbell didn't ask Zen more questions about his bloodline. He turned around and looked at the other Pure Sky platform. But what on earth has General Johnny gone through? Why has he become so violent? Why is he so intent on throwing me back to the winding road? The situation must be more complicated than you think, Zen said with a shrug. On the Pure Sky platform in the distance, Johnny was freed from the extreme pain, and his face darkened. Campbell had awakened by accident, which was why Johnny rushed over. However, that wasn't the only accident that happened. A lowly human had managed to kill a resentment-level treacherous being. How inconceivable. The human spirit sect and the 10 Directions House always welcomed extraordinary talents, which was also the foundation for their growth. However, some human spirits, like Johnny, looked down upon the human beings from the secondary worlds. In their eyes, although these human beings had inherited their looks and were very close to them in many aspects, they were still inferior. And yet, that human was able to not only kill a resentment-level treacherous being, but also was reborn unharmed. How did he do it? What magic did he use? A mass of black material floated up from the Pure Sky platform where Zen and his companions were. It was a remaining part of the black giant. Then, the black material changed shape in accordance with Gianni's hand movements. Soon, it formed the shape of Gianni's head. The head was about the same size as an ordinary head, and the aura of treacherous being contained within it was very weak. The space of the 3 purities stage was very special. Both energies and materials would disappear after they left the Pure Sky platforms. Sounds worked similarly. Thus, this was the only way Johnny could use to transmit his voice. How many light pillars have you triggered in the Eternal Divine Courtyard? Which light pillars are they? Johnny asked. The ancestry-level bloodline had 373 abilities, and they could combine with each other to create many other abilities. The 4 Spirits sect had studied the ancestry-level bloodline for such a long time, but they were still unable to completely figure out its abilities. The ability that Zen had displayed was very powerful, so Johnny wanted to figure it out. Sorry, I can't tell you that, Zen replied bluntly. Gianni's expression hardened. Aren't you afraid of death? Maybe, Zen replied honestly. Gianni's expression softened at his words. You are of great value to us. I can spare your life, but you have to kill everyone else. Hearing this, Campbell raised his eyebrows indignantly. The others couldn't understand what Johnny was saying, but seeing Campbell's expression made them nervous. Zen restrained his temper. With a smile, he asked, Us? Who do you refer to? The 10 Directions House, or the Human Spirit Sect? You don't need to know too much. Just do as I say, Johnny said dismissively. Sorry, I'm not interested. With that, Zen summoned the long spear in his hand and pointed it at Gianni's head. Wait, Johnny said hurriedly. He didn't expect Zen would suddenly turn hostile. However, Zen didn't give him a chance to finish his words. The light of annihilation had pierced through the floating head and it burst into a cloud of smoke. The long spear then flashed and pointed straight at the opposite Pure Sky platform. Zen smiled faintly. What he was interested in was Gianni's background. Since Johnny didn't want to tell him, there was no need for them to keep talking. Gianni's eyes were filled with rage. He never thought Zen would attack him like that. This made him feel like he'd been fooled, and it was a lowly human who was fooling him. Contact the people of the Joy House and ask them to help. Johnny ordered in a low voice. A brown shadow appeared beside him. It was a kind of treacherous being that could transmit messages. The surface of the treacherous being flashed for a while, and then it said, Master Johnny, the people of the Joy House said they can't help right now. The treasure bottle platform is being attacked. How dare they attack the treasure bottle platform? Johnny shouted indignantly. Even the Black House has rushed there, as the Joy House asked for help, said the treacherous being. They are determined. They all want to obtain the energy that was extracted. Gianni's expression darkened. Chapter 3612, Treasure Bottle Platform. The treasure bottle platform was also a Pure Sky platform. At the center of this Pure Sky platform, there was a treasure bottle as tall as a person, and this was how the platform had earned its name. One of the godly ways extracted from the ways blending energy had been sealed up in the treasure bottle. Its purpose was to make sure no complete ways blending energy was ever loosed in the chaos. Although the chance of completing the ways blending energy was not significant, the feat was not impossible. Should someone master the complete ways blending energy, it would release terrible consequences, hence, the treasure bottle platform was heavily guarded, and it was virtually impossible for anyone to break in. More importantly, the secret key in the myriad pagoda mountains was well protected. It was in the possession of a few treacherous beings who had awakened, and it hadn't been discovered for more than 1,000 chaotic eras. How had it then come to the knowledge of someone now? Johnny sensed something unusual was afoot. By comparison, the world builder opposite him was insignificant. You are lucky, but you will not be allowed to leave, Johnny coldly said as he looked at Zen. Then he turned around and walked to the center of the pure sky platform where he disappeared in the sudden flash of an orange light. Of course, Zen and the others witnessed Johnny's departure. I'm afraid Johnny won't let this go, said Campbell worriedly. Zen nodded and said, let's leave here for now. At this moment, everyone's attention was once again locked on that door. According to Campbell, the door had been replaced without anyone noticing. This door prevented anyone who entered the pure sky platform from escaping it. There would be no easy escape as it was unbreakable. Let's work together and try again. No matter what, this door is merely an object, a dead thing. I won't believe that we can't open it with our combined efforts, Foxy suggested. Previously, the situation had been dire, and everyone had tried to use brute force to open the door, but they had failed. Now that they had taken some time to consider it, everyone present was somewhat more optimistic. Everyone, let's use this. Thurston suddenly took out a small paper bag. After opening the paper bag, a small block of hardened oil appeared, which wafted with a strange fragrance. The snake goddess, Foxy, and the others didn't recognize it, but Eastern Emperor Tai's eyes lit up. Is this dragon beast oil? It's such a large block. Yes, Thurston nodded. The dragon beast was known to be a creature that lived in the Divine River. Once it was killed, one could strip off its skin, open its stomach, and source this kind of oil there. Applying this rare oil to one's hands would greatly increase their strength. The dragon beast oil was considered a rarity in the flaming maple forest. After all, it wouldn't trigger any attack from the flaming maple forest, and it could greatly increase one's own power. This dragon beast oil was therefore a treasure Thurston had cherished. However, now in order to escape, he had no choice but make use of it. Everyone stretched out their hands, and Thurston applied the oily substance to them. Even Campbell, who was in the form of a treacherous being, applied some of it. Once Zen applied the oil to his hands, he felt warm. Then he felt strength flow through his hands. The oil had a magical effect. Once everyone had applied the oil, the leader of the men in black robes summoned a small golden statue with a human face and the body of a beast. There were 4 round balls on its back, but 3 of them had been crushed. The leader said, this treasure can double everyone's strength, but it has already been used 3 times. There is only one more opportunity remaining. So saying, he reached out and crushed the last ball. With a crackling noise, 2 rays of golden light shot forth from the eyes of the golden statue. As everyone stood in the halo of the golden light, they immediately felt the strength in their bodies rapidly increase. Being able to increase the power of all the warriors within the golden light by double, the golden statue was naturally no ordinary object. However, it was a pity that it would now be useless since it was used up. In addition to these 2 treasures, the others also revealed their own treasures. The other shore tokens in the 3 purities stage were naturally not ordinary. For a moment, auras of all kinds of energy circulated about in front of the door. When they were in a state of readiness, everyone began to pull at the door. Facing the dragging of a terrifying force, the seemingly ordinary door began to tremble slightly. Come on, everyone, the door can't withstand much longer. Foxy's eyes lit up. As everyone's strength rapidly multiplied, the door shook more and more violently, as if it was about to collapse. However, in the moment everyone anticipated the door's fall, a Sanskrit word suddenly appeared on the surface of it, and around the Sanskrit word there were intricate patterns that extended all the way to the edge of the door. Does this word mean, seal? The snake goddess mused aloud as she looked in wonder at it. The Wing King nodded. Yes, it does. Everyone present more or less knew some Sanskrit words, and they could even decipher some of the more complicated Sanskrit words. With this Sanskrit word being very simple, they easily got the meaning at a glance. However, they only understood this word, but they were clueless as to the patterns on the door. Campbell said to Zen, it can't be opened. This is a sealed door, and it can't be broken by brute force alone. No matter the strength of power that is exerted on it, it can't be opened. Zen asked in disbelief. Campbell nodded. Yes, no physical power can open it. Once Campbell spoke, no one relaxed at all. They had forced out almost every drop of their strength, but the door simply stabilized after the word, seal, appeared. After Zen conveyed Campbell's message to everyone, the Eternal Realm hunters and the men in black robes immediately became discouraged. The snake goddess, Fuxi, and the other Eternal Realm warriors also gave up on trying to force the door open. It's such a pity that my dragon beast oil has been wasted, Thurston said regretfully. The leader of the black-robed men merely shrugged his shoulders. It was obvious his golden statue was even more precious. What can we do now? If we can't open the door, we will be trapped here, won't we? King Yayan asked. Master Campbell, is there no other way to leave here? Zen asked. Studying the door for a long time, Campbell suddenly said, our last option is to destroy this pure sky platform. Destroy the pure sky platform? Zen repeated, aghast. Don't forget what I can do, said Campbell confidently. Campbell's strength might be limited when it came to physical combat, but he was a world builder. All of the chaos had been constructed by him, so he understood the mysteries and principles within the chaos. Previously, the only reason why Campbell hadn't destroyed the pure sky platform was because he cared for the other world builders. The other 199 builders in the winding road suffered the same malady as Campbell. Only once they returned here could they wake up. But now, in order to leave, he had to sacrifice those considerations. Facing the door, he swung about. Then he walked 10 steps backwards, pointed at his feet and instructed, break open here. Following Campbell's instruction, Zen wielded the long spear and stabbed where Campbell had pointed. The ground of the pure sky platform should have been impenetrable as the earlier fighting had done no damage to it. Crack! Unexpectedly, as Zen smashed the ground with the sharpened end of his spear, the ground cracked, revealing a rune buried within the soil. Without so much as a glance at it, Campbell took another 10 steps to the side and ordered, smash here. Chapter 3613, Unfold. Zen followed and smashed down per Campbell's instructions. Crack! This last smash was strong enough and revealed a unique rune below. Similar to the first rune, the second faced a different direction. They must be related to one another. However, Campbell left out an explanation. He continued to walk in another direction, pointing at different areas on the ground, which signaled Zen to smash them open. Crack, 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 crack. Zen had created more than 20 holes in the huge pure sky platform. In each hole, they found a different rune. When Zen formed the last hole, Campbell lightly pressed the rune inside. A ray of faint yellow light reflected out in response to Campbell's touch. All of a sudden, the runes in the other holes lit up one after another. Once they were all glowing with yellow light, the ground trembled. Bang! A muffled sound echoed from the inside of the pure sky platform as if something had just opened within it. Just then, the pure sky platform slowly rotated. The stone pillars that held the armors rose one by one. At the same time, a noticeable crack appeared right at the center of the pure sky platform that revealed the inside of the platform. Within the shell-like structure were patterns and complex structures. The pure sky platform is so ingenious, Fuxi praised. Just like the mechanical devices below the myriad pagoda mountains. The snake goddess nodded in appreciation and then looked at Campbell. These things were probably crafted by the world builders. Whatever, I'm more interested in the armors. Squeak! King Yayan squealed, mesmerized by the display of armors within the stone pillars. The first time they saw the armors and weapons, their interest was immediately piqued. However, Campbell warned that the armors and weapons were protected by powerful restrictions. Afterward, they lost interest and focused on the treacherous beings. Now that the entire pure sky platform had unfolded, King Yayan grew interested to obtain the armors and weapons. Zen, can we take some armors and weapons with us? Squeak! Asked King Yayan excitedly. If they utilize these weapons, they could also rely on the light of annihilation to get rid of the treacherous beings once and for all. After pausing to think, Zen responded, Master Campbell, these are useless if they remain here. May my friends have some. It would surely be an advantage and added protection if we go against the treacherous beings again. As long as they could make use of the light of annihilation, everyone could defend themselves against the treacherous beings. Hearing Zen's request, Campbell turned around and looked at him intently. Though the two were at an understanding, Campbell still doubted if he and Zen were on the same side. This could also be due to his confusion with his future. As a builder of the world, he was originally a member of the human spirit sect. Having no idea what happened to his sect and why the 10 Directions house attacked him, he was full of anxiety and fear. This led him to question Zen and everyone around him, too. At this point, Campbell was confused and troubled for a very long time. Do you still doubt our intention and background? Zen asked as he noticed Campbell's sudden sadness. Yes, Campbell replied with a sigh. Zen nodded. I also do not know where you stand, but do not fear. Though you are confused now, we can help you find the truth. We will cooperate with you before we are sure of your standpoint. Seeing the sincerity in Zen's expression, Campbell nodded in agreement. You know, it doesn't matter whether I take a standpoint or not. If the Four Spirits sect was really destroyed as you said, world builders like me have no place in the world. We are useless, hopeless, and abandoned. It took Campbell more than 1,000 chaotic eras to wake up. Since then, he'd grown weary and depressed. You belittle yourself. Zen shook his head. If you are truly forgotten, the 10 Directions house wouldn't have sent people here, and Johnny wouldn't have rushed over. Zen's words comforted Campbell. The armors and weapons cannot be given to anyone. The other world builders need these items when they wake. The world builders journeyed far to the pure sky platform to fulfill their wishes. As much as the others wanted them, the weapons and armors were necessary for awakening. They were not for Campbell to give away. Not to worry, the armors and weapons are not the sources of the light of annihilation, said Campbell as he pointed towards the bottom of the stone pillar. That is where important things lie. Please, take them out. Puzzled, Zen walked towards the stone pillar and reached out his hand to feel for the bottom of the pillar. He pulled out a palm-sized cubic stone from below, which had a grain of white sand embedded at the center. Zen brought it back to Campbell and held it out. What's this? This is a holy stone, but a small one, Campbell said with a smile. The light of annihilation in the armors and weapons comes from this grid-like holy stone. Zen was unaware of this before, and his jaw dropped at Campbell's last line. A holy stone the size of a grid could provide loads of light of annihilation. As he recalled, the holy stone snatched away from less was 100 times larger, no wonder the light of annihilation constantly flowed from it. The light of annihilation in these holy stones is replenished after it is used up. This is a powerful weapon against the treacherous beings, and everyone here can take one for themselves, Campbell said as he gestured towards the pillars. After Zen told everyone what Campbell had said, their eyes widened in excitement, especially the 3 Eternal Realm Hunters. The light of annihilation restrained treacherous beings better than any other method. No doubt it was a good weapon for the warriors to have. With Campbell's permission, each of the others carefully took out a stone from the bottom of the stone pillar. Once Campbell imparted the method of activating the light of annihilation to all of them, they put their stones away for safekeeping. Afterward, Campbell observed the center of the pure sky platform and spotted a wall beside the unfolded area. It's time to leave here. Just need to break the wall. Within a second, Zen flew forward and threw a heavy punch at the center of the wall. Boom! The wall immediately collapsed with a bang and revealed a small passageway. It was so short that the ceiling of the tunnel was the height of their hips. Zen bent down and drilled into the passageway. They all moved forward, but at around 200 feet, they were met with another wall. Zen did not hesitate and threw another punch. Boom! Once the wall collapsed, they were met with a large, luxurious pool. They exited the passage one after another. When they saw the pool and the bronze statues again, they all took a breath of relief. After the battle, the Eternal Realm Warriors and the Eternal Realm Hunters did not suffer much loss. They were quite lucky to have done so. However, more than half of the black-robed men were killed. These men in black robes had a grudge against their leader. They risked their lives to follow Zen but inherited no benefits. Besides, many of them ended up being injured or dead for no reason. However, the leader of the black-robed men comforted them, which allowed them to calm down eventually. With the help of Zen, they had obtained the 6-headed eagle's eggs, which meant that they saved the entire Night Being race. Because of this, they were indebted to Zen. Moreover, they all obtained a piece of holy stone that they treated like a treasure. If they were faced with the treacherous beings again, they were prepared this time. Chapter 3614, Reinforcement. At the edge of the freezing wilderness, there were 2 crystal-like ice frogs sleeping more than 100 feet deep underground. This certain species of ice frogs was very rare. As long as there was no external factor that would awaken them, they could continuously sleep for about 1,000 years. Thus, they were considered as one of the most popular other shore tokens that could be found in the Supreme Pure Realm. Crack! Suddenly, a powerful force was digging from above. The huge vibration caused by it awakened the ice frogs. Whoosh! A white mist was released from their bodies. This mist was of extremely low temperature. It could not only form a protective layer on their bodies, but also freeze the surrounding enemies to death. However, the digger from above, who was a fire spirit from the element spirit race, didn't have a hint of fear for the deadly white mist. As the white mist surged up the hole that he was digging, the fire spirit just let out a mocking laugh. In an instant, his blazing flames dispersed all of the white mist. Whoosh! Whoosh! The ravaging flames from the fire spirit poured into the pit and mercilessly melted the ice frogs and their protective barriers. They're not here. Maybe I'll continue digging westward, the fire spirit informed. The snow that had been piled up for countless years near the snow line to the east of the freezing wilderness had completely disappeared, thanks to the fire spirit. It now revealed a layer of frozen black earth, which was also dug open. The members of the element spirit race continued to dig deeper. At the same time, Claire floated in the air and was overseeing the digging process. Can't you find them in such a large area? The Holy Wings armor that was floating beside Claire was actually controlled by Gavin. He then looked into the black ground and asked, is it possible that they entered the wilderness of no return? Hearing Gavin's question, Claire narrowed her eyes and there was a hint of caution on her face. It was true that the snow line had been erased before she arrived. Thus, she thought there was a possibility that Gavin was correct. It makes sense, but were they that stupid to really do it? They couldn't come back if they entered that place. Weren't they afraid of death? Claire was still suspicious of the suggestion. We don't know that yet. There's a possibility that they can find a special road in the wilderness of no return, Gavin speculated. I can at least give it a try. With that, he gently raised his hand and a door formed by blue lights immediately appeared above the palm of the Holy Wings armor. Whoosh, whoosh, several fist-sized fire spirits were released from the Holy Wings armor. Upon closer inspection, these fire spirits were still in their childhood. Since their intelligence was not high enough, they couldn't decide for themselves yet and they would just follow orders. Upon seeing that Gavin was about to send several young fire spirits into the wilderness of no return, Claire lashed at him, what do you think you're doing? Do you have to sacrifice that large number of fire spirits? What are you so mad about? It's so easy to produce them. You could give birth to millions of these spirits in the Holy Wings armor. What's there to lose? Gavin sneered as he shrugged his shoulders. The Holy Wings armor immediately made the sound of metal rubbing against each other. You mongrel. Claire's face darkened. She couldn't utter another word upon hearing his reasoning. She began to regret helping Gavin take control of the Holy Wings armor. It was true that Claire could produce millions of fire spirits. However, in her eyes, no matter how weak the fire spirits were, they were still members of the element spirit race. They weren't mere tools. But Gavin's perspective was different. In his mind, these young fire spirits were just a bunch of flames that couldn't think on their own. And he could use them however he wanted to attain his goal. At Gavin's order, the fire spirits crowded against one another. They excitedly gathered and formed a huge flame. As the huge flame reached the edge of the snow line, it quickly rushed into the wilderness of no return. Swoosh, phew, phew, phew. Gavin's plan was simple and straightforward. If they found the road that they were looking for, they could return, but if not, they would die. With that, the first fire spirit rushed into the wilderness of no return without hesitation. It kept running forward until it exhausted all of its energy. Eventually, its flame was extinguished. One by one, fire spirits continuously jumped out of the huge flame and rushed into the wilderness of no return. From afar, it could be seen that there was a slanted flame line spreading forward, which looked very shocking. Those humans destroyed the snow line. If they entered from a particular part of the snow line, we will definitely find that road, Gavin said confidently. Claire also knew that this method would work. However, she was against it knowing that several fire spirits would needlessly die. Whoosh! More and more fire spirits rushed into the wilderness of no return. Gavin felt that they were getting closer and closer to the road that they were looking for. Soon the fire spirits had reached a point that was just 10 miles away from the road. Then, there were just 5 miles to go. 3 miles to go. When they were only about a mile from that road, it seemed that there was no fire spirit left to rush into the wilderness of no return. Wow, they were all used up. Release some more. At Gavin's command, the Holy Wings armor opened a door formed by blue lights once more. This time, a mass of bright blue thunder spirits had come out. These spirits continuously crackled and also began to gather to form a huge source of a thunderbolt. There was no stopping Gavin. The Holy Wings armor was under his control, so he would use every member of the element spirit race if needed, just to fulfill his goal. Just when Gavin was about to give the order to the thunder spirits, a familiar voice suddenly sounded in his and Claire's minds. Claire, Slade, you need to come back, the ice spirit said. Hearing the message, both of their expressions became serious. If the ice spirit was summoning them urgently, it only meant that there was a serious situation going on. What happened? Claire asked straightforwardly. The Nihility race is attacking the treasure bottle platform, the ice spirit answered briefly. She was greatly shocked at what she heard. Those mongrels, how dare they? She yelled in anger. On the surface, the element spirit civilization was battling against the nihility race on the other shore. But the truth was, there were two more powerful forces behind them. The treasure bottle platform had always been heavily guarded by the element spirit civilization. But in fact, the powerful treacherous beings were also there. Since the nihility race dared to make a move, they must be pretty confident. Come back right now. We need reinforcements, the ice spirit ordered. Naturally, it was an urgent command that couldn't be disobeyed. So, Gavin raised his hand and ordered the thunder spirits to return to the Holy Wings armor. Claire also informed the other members of the element spirit race that were looking for Zen and his companions in the freezing wilderness. After all of the members had gathered and returned to the Holy Wings armor, an authoritative voice sounded. Hand over the control of the Holy Wings armor, Gavin. The search for Zen and the others was just a special case. Since all the elders of the element spirit race had left, Gavin was tasked to control the Holy Wings armor. But now that all the members of the element spirit race had returned and merged into Slate again, they had to ask Gavin to hand over the control of the Holy Wings armor. It's not necessary right now. Didn't you hear that the matter was urgent? Gavin replied. He was actually yearning to control the Holy Wings armor for a long time now, so he wouldn't just give it back so easily. The collective consciousness inside Slade answered, yes, the matter's urgent. That's why you need to obey the order. Claire, do you think? Gavin let out a cold snort, and Slade's voice suddenly stopped. The internal world of the Holy Wings armor was now controlled by Gavin, so it was just easy for him to block their voices. I said it was not the time for that. Let's go. Whoosh. Gavin spread out the wings of the Holy Wings armor and quickly flew forward. Claire soared in the sky and looked at the back of the Holy Wings armor. She kind of knew what Gavin was thinking. Her eyes narrowed as she flew closely behind. Chapter 3615, Giants in the River. Zen and his group returned to the pool and started to crawl along the long fishing rods. When they reached the end of the rods, they then clasped the hooks with their fingers, swinging themselves down. In the lead were Zen, Campbell, and Fuxie. Soon after, they returned to the cave. The moment they stepped inside, they were stunned to find a huge pile of green crystals that filled the entire cave. The abundance of crystals completely blocked the way in. What is that? King Yayan exclaimed in its surprise. Taking a step forward, Fuxie gently tapped on them. Examining them cautiously, he commented, this stuff is so dense. I'm afraid it won't be easy to break. Before he could finish the statement, the snake goddess interrupted him. These crystals must be the regal jades from the Wing King's body. He was the last one to head up, so this must have been arranged by him to cover our rear. I think so, Zen agreed with a smile. While the Wing King never mentioned it to him outright, Zen was rather familiar with these regal jades. Once the black-robed men and the Eternal Realm hunters followed suit and swung down, the Wing King was the last to return. For the most part, he remained silent, bringing up the rear. Walking to the pile of regal jades, he stretched out his wings and flapped at them. With that, the solid green crystals quickly melted like wax before fire and flowed toward the Wing King's body. It wasn't long before he absorbed them all. Once he did, he stepped aside, remaining silent as usual. In the past, the regal jade civilization suffered a miserable failure when they developed a festering feud with the nihility race. Ever since they encountered Zen in the dark region of Stage 13, the Wing King favored Zen's superior talent, entrusting the hope of the entire regal jade civilization to him. And never had he regretted the choice, not even now. Zen had never disappointed him, instead, he greatly exceeded each and every expectation the Wing King had for him. Naturally, the latter was willing to devote himself to the man. Once they left the cave, they returned along the path of the wilderness of no return. The cave's exit stood close to the Divine River, only about 30 feet away. Previously, Eastern Emperor Tai had been rather confident that this path would intersect with the Divine River. If they managed to enter it, he would have liked to dig into the soil for treasures. Unfortunately, the cave leading to the Jade Pure Realm was the end of the path. Eventually, he had to relinquish the idea of entering the Divine River. The minute they stepped out of the cave, the strange sight in the river had them all astonished. Normally, the water in the Divine River was a dark green color, the color of the soul interdicting water which was preventive against other shore warriors from leaving the other shore. The water's color never changed, save for when shoals of golden bites swam across the river, their bright scales illuminating the water with a golden shine. But now, the water was dark red, emitting a strong smell of blood that spread across the river. How did the Divine River end up like this? Eastern Emperor Tai, who happened to be the most interested in the Divine River, muttered to himself. It's the smell of blood, said the snake goddess, taking a whiff of the air. I don't know whose blood it is, but it seems to have been flowing in the river for a long time. It's beginning to decay. Apart from the smell of blood, another rotten odor was coming from the river. Have you ever seen the divine river like this? Zen asked. Both the leader of the black-robed men and the Eternal Realm Hunters shook their heads vigorously. The Eternal Realm Hunters were rather knowledgeable, having been around the divine river for a long time. But even they were stumped, they had never seen it like this. A battle happened at the upper reaches of the river, Campbell suddenly remarked. Only Zen could understand his language, but as soon as he opened his mouth, everyone tuned in attentively. They knew he was a world builder. After all, nobody in the entire chaos could know more about it than him. Do the upper reaches refer to the main pure sky platform? Zen asked. Earlier, Campbell had told him that the main pure sky platform was the real Jade Pure Realm. In the end, he surmised that the upper reaches of the divine river indeed lay in the Jade Pure Realm. To his surprise, Campbell shook his head. That's not necessarily the case. When we planned the divine river's basin, we led its water from the main pure sky platform to some other smaller ones which made it meander several times. The smaller pure sky platforms. But they're not connected to each other. How could they become the divine river's basin? Zen asked in confusion. We used a special method, of course, Campbell said proudly. Once he got onto the subject of his major, there was no holding him back. It's a permanent combination of different spaces. It's only in this way that we managed to put the completed divine river into them. As Campbell continued introducing the mechanism, Thurston suddenly pointed to the distance and shouted, "Look there! Something is flowing along the divine river." Immediately, everyone turned to where he was pointing. An enormous figure was floating on the surface of the blood-red divine river. It was flowing rapidly toward them. When it got closer, they finally got a clear look. It was a giant's corpse, lying on his side in the water. The giant seemed to have been ruthlessly skinned, one half of him soaked in the water while the other half floated on the surface. Half of his exposed face was swollen from all the soaking, one of his eyes wide open with anger. He seemed to have died a highly resentful death. On the giant's dead body hopped a flock of crows, pecking at his rotten flesh. Each of the crows only had a single eye. Despite their small size, they exuded an indescribably evil aura. It was somewhat akin to the treacherous being's aura, but not quite the same. Soon, the one-eyed crows noticed Zen and the others on the shore. As it turned out, the crows looked more interested in fresh prey than a rotten corpse. With a loud caw, one of the crows took the lead and flew away from the divine river, heading straight for Zen's group. But just as it reached about 10 feet, an invisible force suddenly wrapped around its body, dragging it forward against its will. Failing to return to the river, it went straight into the depths of the wilderness of no return. The same thing happened to the rest of the crows. Once they left the range of the divine river, all of them were affected by the mysterious power, reluctantly flying toward opposite directions. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief at the sight. Their nerves had been going wild because the one-eyed crows seemed to be highly powerful creatures of the Jade Pure Realm. Nobody knew what abilities they possessed, nor did they have any idea how difficult it would be to deal with them. When Zen asked Campbell if he knew of these other shore creatures, the latter only shook his head in reply. While it was true that he was a world builder, he already left to find the next suitable spot once the previous world was completed. Because of this, he knew little of the later developments in the secondary worlds. Without having experienced much of the chaos development, he could only offer so much information. For a while longer, they lingered on the bank of the divine river. In a short period of time, they witnessed 6 more dead giants flowing down along the river. With that, they concluded that the river must have turned red because of the great amount of blood from the giants. Whoever had killed them, though, remained an enigma to them. After taking the time to observe the area, they returned along the same path they had come. Encountering no obstacles in the wilderness, they found the journey back was rather smooth. But when they arrived at the snowline, much to their surprise, they found an area of bare brown earth. Chapter 3616, Divide into 2 groups. Eastern Emperor Tai gazed around him, frowning. If memory serves me right, this should be a thick snow field, he muttered. The field was brown and completely devoid of any snow. All the ground within a radius of several miles was sunken to a depth of over 100 feet. It seemed clear what had happened. The element spirit civilization had dug far and wide into the depths of this former snow field. The snake goddess shrugged, looking unperturbed. She said, "The shadow marks can last for 5 days. Although the shadow warriors didn't monitor us directly, it wouldn't have been difficult to find this place using the marks. After entering that road in the wilderness of no return, the snake goddess had used her shadow to destroy the snow line. In hindsight, it seemed to have been a wise decision. Otherwise, they would be blocked halfway by the element spirit civilization. They carefully observed their surroundings, keeping a sharp lookout for anyone from the element spirit civilization. After they had ensured that they were alone, they crossed the snow line and returned to the freezing wilderness. Immediately, the body of the Wing King began to expand. His human-shaped figure transformed into the form of a giant hawk, with a wingspan at least several hundred feet wide. He spread his wings and the group of people clambered onto his back, whereupon he soared into the open sky above the freezing wilderness. When they were about a third of the way across the freezing wilderness, the leader of the black-robed men turned to Zen. He bid him goodbye and thanked him one last time. Previously, he had decided to follow Zen as far as he could in order to repay him. Moreover, although their race had always lived in the dark region, they had a great relationship with humans. While they had been able to offer some help during the fray, the leader was very clear that the true strength of the night-being race could only be displayed in the dark region. Once they reached the light region, it would be difficult for them to fight against enemies. Indeed, they would only be a burden. Before leaving, the leader gave Zen a piece of black silk. He explained that it was a way for Zen to call upon them for assistance. Should the silk be torn anywhere in the dark region, the night-being race would instantly know his location. Zen acknowledged the gesture, and the black-robed man left with his remaining clansmen. After they departed, the Wing King spread his wings and rose once more over the vast freezing wilderness. Occasionally, they caught sight of a few creatures in the snow below them. The creatures watched and pointed at the group flying in the sky, their faces filled with malice, as though they would attack them if given the chance. However, the Wing King flew too swiftly for anyone to catch them. Before they could take action, he had turned into a green light and escaped far away. Campbell stared out across the vast expanse of white snow. His eyes were hooded, but there was a glimmer of sadness in them. He had always wanted to awaken, but unexpectedly, he had been abandoned after awakening. For a long while he was silent as they flew. Then suddenly, he leaned closer to Zen and asked, "Can you tell me about what happened in the past? Can you tell me what history you know over the past 1,000 chaotic eras?" Zen did not look surprised at the sudden questions. He nodded and gave Campbell an overview of the chaos history he was familiar with. Of course, there was some sensitive information that he kept to himself. Campbell listened closely. When Zen was done, he asked, "So the two strongest forces in the chaos are the element spirit civilization and the nihility race?" "Exactly," Zen replied, nodding. "Yet they are only puppets, controlled by unknown forces with their own ulterior motives," Campbell remarked disapprovingly. Zen raised an eyebrow, considering Campbell's statement. He said, "I think so too." Zen himself had not realized this before entering the Supreme Pure Realm. As he got to know the treacherous beings and met Johnny of the 10 Directions house, he had learned more about the element spirit civilization and the nihility race. In reality, their backgrounds were quite complicated, and a far cry from the simple history he had imagined. "You are all alone with no reinforcements. It's really surprising that you have come this far," Campbell observed, turning his head to look at the Eternal Realm warriors on the back of the Wing King. Although Campbell had not been very strong back then, he was clear about the strength of this group of Eternal Realm warriors. It was impossible for them to fight against the forces behind the element spirit civilization and the nihility race. "That's right," Zen agreed. He decided to take the opportunity to request help from Campbell. "I hope that you can help us complete the finale way and prevent the chaos from being destroyed again." The chaos had been destroyed repeatedly because the Four Spirits sect needed to extract energy from it. Campbell lowered his head, saying nothing. After several moments of contemplation, he said, "If you are correct that the Four Spirits sect has been exterminated, then it is indeed meaningless to continue destroying the chaos. I can help you to figure out the truth, but I must also save my companions from the winding road. I need to awaken them." "We will awaken them. I believe it can be done without any trouble," Zen said with a confident smile. Zen and his group had gained a preliminary understanding of the treacherous beings from his communications with the leader of the black-robed men on the Pure Sky platform. The treacherous beings were divided into several types in accordance with their different wishes. For instance, those on the winding road belonged to the attaching type. They sought to possess other living beings in order to go to the Pure Sky platform and retrieve everything they'd had before their death. If they were successful in completing this goal, they would naturally awaken. Thus, they only needed to send some creatures into the winding road and allow the treacherous beings to possess them. The treacherous beings would wake up after they went to the Pure Sky platform to get what they wanted. Zen turned to the snake goddess, Fuxi, and the others. He told them, Master Campbell wishes to awaken his companions. They knew Campbell was referring to the 199 treacherous beings on the winding road. Wake them up, you say? Said King Yayan. It mulled over the idea. Meanwhile, the snake goddess was thinking quickly, formulating a plan. She said, in that case, we must capture 199 creatures on the other shore. We will bring them into the winding road. Fuxi said, it shouldn't be difficult. Although the creatures in the three purities stage are not to be trifled with, there are still some relatively weak races. As long as we have enough time, we can do it. But of course, the top priority right now is to save the heroes of the human race. Based on the plan devised by Zen and the primeval Lord of Heaven, they would begin to rescue the human heroes trapped in the underground after entering the Supreme Pure Realm. But they had lost time while Zen was possessed by Campbell. It would take a long time to save the treacherous beings on the winding road now. When Fuxi finished speaking, something began flowing from the back of the Wing King. Dark green liquid oozed out from beneath the feathers. The green substance pooled together and rose to form a body, turning into a human-shaped regal jade statue. Zen, ask if this regal jade statue can be used, the Wing King instructed. Zen asked in Sanskrit, Master Campbell, will your companions possess this regal jade statue? Campbell studied the regal jade statue, then nodded. His eyes brightened with satisfaction. Yes, they will. In fact, the treacherous beings on the winding road didn't need to possess other creatures to awaken. The reason for possessing other creatures was their desire to use the light of annihilation to kill the treacherous beings with big heads. But now that all such treacherous beings had been killed, they could simply walk straight out of the winding road. However, they still wanted to realize their long-cherished wishes. The regal jade statues made by the Wing King would lead them out of the winding road and enable them to reach the pure sky platform. Well then, we can divide into two groups. I will go to the winding road to awaken those treacherous beings, and you go to open the underground passage to save the heroes of the human race, said the Wing King gravely. The snake goddess nodded. I agree. It's a good arrangement. There was an empty thatched hut since Campbell had left the winding road, and it would be safe for the Wing King to enter it alone. As soon as everyone had voiced their approval of the plan, the Wing King sent them to the myriad pagoda mountains. Then he changed his route. Wings spread, casting an enormous shadow on the ground below, the giant hawk flew alone towards the blood swamp. Chapter 3617, on the treasure bottle platform. In the Jade Pure Realm, on the immense, 100-mile-long and wide pure sky platform, stood a huge treasure bottle in the shape of a gourd. It was crystal clear and beamed magnificent colors as light reflected off it and refracted through it. A wide river flowed beside the treasure bottle, appearing out of the void of the Jade Pure Realm and passing through the treasure bottle platform. This was the famous Divine River. Many giants' corpses lay on either side of the Divine River. Blood gurgled from their bodies and into the river through the drains, dyeing it a blood red. A fat monk stood beside the corpses, smiling relentlessly. He appeared kind and friendly by his face, but the blood soaked into his robe said otherwise. He grabbed a corpse and pushed it into the Divine River. Splash! The body drifted down with the current. On the opposite side of the river, a woman in a long robe was covered in blood as well, her once pure white robe now a deep red. Like the fat monk, she too was pushing corpses into the river. The fat man might have looked like a monk, but he was in fact a Taoist priest. His name was Darby and he was the eldest disciple of the Grand Master of Heaven. The woman was Stella, the youngest of the Grand Master of Heaven's disciples. I did not expect our master to kill so many giants in only 3 days. His strength must have increased significantly, sighed Darby. The giants in the Jade Pure Realm possessed terrifying strength. Facing so many was incomprehensible. If Darby came face to face with just one, he would be forced to retreat. Being the eldest disciple, not only did he have all kinds of treasures, but the bloodline he had obtained from the eternal scroll painting was extremely magical too. He was definitely among the top figures of the many Eternal Realm warriors. A speck of worry appeared in Stella's eyes. Our master has indeed become stronger, but did you notice that he seemed almost entirely not himself during the battle? It's understandable. He was so determined to kill his opponents that perhaps he forgot himself a little and was not as kind as usual, Darby said as if this was common knowledge. But Stella shook her head and replied, no, it was more than that. It felt to me that he was possessed by a treacherous being. Do you remember how our sister died? Darby darkened at the mention of their sister and scolded, don't ever mention her again. The sister they were talking about was the second disciple of the Grand Master of Heaven. She took care of Samantha, Sienna and Stella like a mother and they treated her as one. The Grand Master of Heaven once encountered a powerful enemy, and in the heat of battle, he lost control. He bullied his opponent back, forcing him to retreat before he slaughtered him like a madman. Although he was victorious, in his wildness, he had accidentally killed his second disciple. This shadow of hurt had always lingered in Stella's heart. It was a difficult reality for all three sisters to face. Stella had buried the matter within the depths of herself, but the way the Grand Master of Heaven mauled his way through all the giants in a craze brought it all back. She had been standing close to one of the giants as he rampaged. If Darby hadn't dragged her away, the Grand Master of Heaven would have killed her as well. When she looked into his eyes, an uncontrollable shiver ran through her. As she looked at him, he was not a person anymore, but a disgusting, treacherous being. They had won the battle on the treasure bottle platform, but the thought of the look on her master's face unearthed memories of her big sister and made her terribly uneasy. She hadn't expected such a harsh reaction from Darby when she mentioned their dead sister. But Darby's heart softened when he saw the grief on her face and immediately made an attempt to comfort her. Master has his worries too. Many things are not as simple as they seem. How do we fight the element spirit civilization? Do you think it's possible for Master to do this alone? As the outside world saw it, the Grand Master of Heaven alone led the Nihility race in the fight against the element spirit civilization. However, very few knew the truth, and even Stella and her other two sisters were clueless as to it. Stella pursed her lips and calmed down, admitting in a low voice, "I know. No matter what kind of person he is, he will always be my master." Splash! Darby pushed another giant's corpse into the divine river and the water rippled as it fell. With a smile, he said, "That's right. We shouldn't doubt our master." Many of the elites of the Nihility race were from other races, but only 9, including the Grand Master of Heaven, were humans. Naturally, they had always been close with one another. 4 red spheres floated under the massive treasure bottle. Powerhouses of different shapes floated in these red spheres. They all advocated the Nihility way, and some were leaders of their races on the other shore. With their faith in the Nihility way, they did all they could to destroy absolutely everything, and so it made sense for them to follow the Grand Master of Heaven. They were Ewing, Sloane, Phelps and Larson. They each used their own thurgies in an attempt to open the treasure bottle. But all their efforts were in vain as the bottle remained motionless. On the bottle was a single Sanskrit word, seal, and around the word were thick lines that extended all over the bottle. They knew the sturdiness and stubbornness of the bottle were related to the word on it, but none of them could find a way to break it. What on earth is in the bottle that the element spirit civilization has to protect it like this? Ewing's rough voice asked from one of the red spheres. In addition to the numerous giants, there are also so many hostility-level treacherous beings. Whatever is in this bottle must be very valuable, Phelps speculated. I didn't expect us to not be able to open the bottle after we took the treasure bottle platform. This is really embarrassing. As the 4 were deep in discussion, the Grand Master of Heaven sauntered over. He wore a golden robe that fluttered even though there was no wind. He was a truly intimidating figure to behold. Swish! He stretched out a hand and drew a black dagger from his waist. It was not made of gold, copper or jade, but instead looked like the tooth of some kind of monster. That's the tooth of someone in the darkness. How did you get that? Sloane, who looked like a cat and was the first on the left, asked. The Grand Master of Heaven didn't answer him. He leapt gracefully and nailed the black dagger firmly in the Sanskrit word, and the lines strewn across the bottle began glowing as he did. The light faded and the lines that had been used to sustain the bottle turned into cracks. A pale yellow energy emitted from the bottle, shocking the 4 powerful creatures when they saw it. Chapter 3618, Meows. The 4 powerful creatures didn't quite expect that the energy inside the bottle would be so feeble. Huh, the aura of this energy is awfully weak. Apparently, this is the aura of the godly way. But is it really a godly way? Indeed, the aura is extremely unusual. Upon closer inspection, it doesn't belong to any of the 3,000 godly ways. However, it does look like the aura of the godly way. And even if their cultivation of a godly way actually reached the peak level, they would merely acquire 1 divine megaton of force. Why on earth would they be interested in it? At any rate, they had been staying in the Supreme Pure Realm for such a long period of time. This meant that they weren't aware of the news circulating in the Grand Plane stage. In addition to that, the Grand Master of Heaven had never divulged any information regarding the evil god. I assure you, this is indeed the godly way energy, the Grand Master of Heaven stated frankly. He didn't want to beat around the bush. The 4 red spheres were rotating simultaneously. When they heard the Grand Master of Heaven's confirmation, they exchanged meaningful glances. They paid a great price in order to capture the treasure bottle platform. Despite that, all they got was the godly way energy. They couldn't accept that this was it. They had a hard time wrapping their heads around it. Was the Grand Master of Heaven insane? They all thought so. Why else would he choose to grab this? Nevertheless, the Grand Master of Heaven always had the most accurate predictions. He even managed to help them escape from death countless times. Obviously, he would never do such a boring thing. So what's the use of the godly way energy anyway? Phelps decided to go along with the Grand Master of Heaven's train of thought. He might as well learn what his purpose was. You are from the other shore. Therefore, you have never set foot in the chaos before. Ewing, go ahead and tell him what the use of the godly way energy is, instructed the Grand Master of Heaven. While Phelps was from the other shore, Ewing, on the other hand, was from a ruling civilization that existed in the chaos. When the Grand Master of Heaven called his name, Ewing had an inscrutable expression on his face. The godly way energy helps one reach the consummation of true God realm and subsequently break through to the other shore realm, he answered. When Phelps, Sloane, and Larson heard his answer, they merely broke into laughter. The other shore realm was quite insignificant to them. The Grand Master of Heaven slightly turned blue in the face as he restrained himself from reprimanding them. He turned around to face Ewing and asked, "Do your race not cultivate the ways blending energy?" "Huh, the ways blending energy, why would we? Isn't it just a waste of time?" Ewing questioned. In his honest opinion, cultivating the ways blending energy was far inferior to entering the other shore. As a matter of fact, most of the other shore realm warriors had the same notion even until now. The Grand Master of Heaven sighed and felt a bit frustrated. The main reason why the ways blending energy isn't that strong is that it has always been flawed. Remember, the 6 great truths are all derived from the ways blending energy. The complete ways blending energy is actually very powerful. Even as he tried to explain it, Phelps, Larson, and Sloane still didn't understand what he meant. After all, the 3 of them were from the Grand Plain stage on the other shore. And there, they had almost no chance to learn about the concept of the godly way. However, Ewing had a serious expression on his face. He felt like he had heard of this before. When he was still in the chaos, he didn't cultivate the ways blending energy. However, his now deceased brother was very obsessed with it. His brother had actually spent a lot of time on it. Sadly, the final result was not good. Later on, his brother told him that the ways blending energy was extremely powerful. The only drawback was it could be extremely difficult to blend the godly ways. More importantly, the energy was incomplete and defective. At that time, Ewing didn't take his brother's words seriously. He simply thought that he had failed in cultivating the ways blending energy, so he just used it as an excuse to save face. What the Grand Master of Heaven said strongly reminded him of what his brother also told him once before. The complete ways blending energy may be extraordinarily terrifying, Ewing mumbled quietly. The words came out of his mouth as though from a long-forgotten memory. The Grand Master of Heaven smiled when he heard this. That is precisely why I wanted to attack the treasure bottle platform. As soon as he finished talking, he took out a small bottle. Collect, he said to the pale yellow energy floating in the air. Swoosh, the bottle gave off such an attraction force. The pale yellow energy floated noiselessly in the air. Trapped in the treasure bottle for many chaotic eras, it had now become intelligent. It was struggling very hard to get out of that attraction force. However, it was too weak to resist it. Soon enough, it was sucked into the bottle. At this very moment, everyone heard a strange sound out of the blue. Meow. The meow was very soft. It was almost like a newborn kitten's cry. They could tell that the voice came from afar, but it could be distinctly heard from all over the place. Is there a kitten somewhere? I heard a meow, Stella asked confusedly. She had just thrown a giant's corpse into the divine river. However, even the loud splash of the water was unable to cover up the meowing sound. Darby was a lot more sensitive than Stella was. Without warning, his spiritual sense had spread out and covered the pure sky platform. Instinctively, he turned around and aimed at the northern area. The Grand Master of Heaven brought out a wooden cork from his waistband. There were elegant runes carved on the cork. With it, he covered the mouth of the bottle and gently tapped the runes with his fingertips. Buzz! The runes on the cork flashed and firmly sealed the bottle. After that, the Grand Master of Heaven raised his head and smiled at the void. I have a question for you. He held the bottle firmly in his hand and shook it. The bottle had an interesting feature. It would change its color in accordance to the color of the thing inside it. Therefore, the elegant white porcelain bottle had now turned yellow. Now that the godly way energy has been successfully extracted, why should you not destroy it right away? the Grand Master of Heaven asked. Meow. They heard another meow echoing through the entire area. There may only be one truth, the Grand Master of Heaven answered the question himself. The energy of the entire chaos is constant. Even if you destroy this godly way energy, it would just be reproduced somewhere else in the chaos. Is my speculation correct? Meow. The meow had gotten even louder and much clearer. In an instant, they seemed to realize that it had a terrible magic power. As the sound faded away, everyone who heard it felt agonizing pain in their ears. It was almost as if they were actually getting clawed by a cat. Ouch! That hurts! Stella screamed and covered her ears with her hands. When he saw this, Darby turned his hand upward and a small golden bell appeared on his palm. He loved collecting treasures. He carried over 1,000 of them with him all the time. He gently tossed it upwards. In the blink of an eye, the small bell turned into a big golden bell that covered him and Stella. At the same time, it kept chiming softly, which effectively alleviated the pain in their ears. Phelps, Larson, Ewing, and Sloane also used their own methods of protecting their ears from the shrill and piercing cries. On the other hand, the Grand Master of Heaven remained standing still and made no effort to cover his ears. He merely stared toward the north. From the outside of the treasure bottle platform, an enormous cat head slowly appeared. It had a white ball embedded on the top of it, which was filled with numerous eyeballs. They noticed that these were not illusory eyes, but real ones. Each and every one of them was connected by blood vessels in a very complex manner. This being was actually the leader of the element spirit civilization, the Eye Spirit. All of a sudden, a booming voice came out of his body. Do you really think you can easily get away with something that is not yours? He asked them in an intimidating manner. Shouldn't the treasure bottle platform be a trap? It could be just like what I did to those puny humans before. What do you think? After the Eye Spirit finished talking, Phelps, Larson, Sloane, and Ewing felt ill at ease. Meanwhile, the Grand Master of Heaven remained as calm as usual. Chapter 3619, Possession of Treacherous Beings. The element spirit civilization had always regarded the treasure bottle platform as a very important place for their race. It was heavily guarded by the Joy House. For the longest time, the members of the Nihility race had never even considered attacking the treasure bottle platform. But this time, the Grand Master of Heaven was able to lead them inside. They fought their way in and killed all of the members of the Joy House. The plan went too smoothly that it felt like a trap. The Grand Master of Heaven looked around then sneered. It has taken me some time before I managed to lure out and vanquish the ghosts of the Joy House. But now, it seems like they were just baits. Does it mean that this is some sort of bait as well? Or are you freely handing it over to me? After saying this, the Grand Master of Heaven faced towards the Eye Spirit and shook the pale yellow bottle in his hand. All of a sudden, one of the Eye Spirit's eyes opened wide and fixed its stare at the bottle. It glared with such force that, swoosh, the Grand Master of Heaven's arm was completely chopped off by the eye's intense stare. The severed arm still held the bottle in its hand. Both had instantly disappeared and reappeared beside the Eye Spirit. Grand Master of Heaven, your arm, Phelps yelled in shock. He stared at it with a frown. Ewing, Sloane, and Larson exchanged nervous glances. They couldn't believe what just happened. However, they thought the Grand Master of Heaven wouldn't have been so careless. Maybe he had a trick up his sleeve. Nevertheless, they were still a little worried when they saw his bloody arm. They needed not worry because at the next moment, the arm in the bottle that appeared beside the Eye Spirit suddenly exploded. They merely turned into a mass of colorful smoke. Seeing this, the Grand Master of Heaven smiled and calmly took out a white silk cloth to cover his wound. Astonishingly, the broken arm had been recovered when he pulled the silk cloth off. The bottle was still in his hand. He continued to shake the bottle towards the Eye Spirit. It was simply magic. All at once, each and every eyeball on the Eye Spirit's body blinked. They looked at the Grand Master of Heaven with disgust and pure loathing. There is no way I'd let you have the godly way energy. You won't be able to get out of here alive. Meow. The huge cat under the Eye Spirit got up with its back arched. Its fur stood on its ends as it started to emit an extremely foul and repulsive aura. This was a resentment-level treacherous being. It was known to be exceptionally powerful among its kind. The revolting aura immediately began turning into visible black waves. Darby's golden bell was a powerful defensive treasure. However, the surface of the bell was instantly riddled with holes as the black waves washed over it. Under the pressure of the black waves, Stella was about to collapse. Darby, take Stella away from here, the Grand Master of Heaven ordered at once. Yes, Master, right away. Darby bowed obediently and asked, but can I stay and fight here afterwards? However, the Grand Master of Heaven merely gave him a cold look, so he didn't say anything else. As soon as he put away the golden bell, a silver curtain appeared in his other hand. He wrapped himself and Stella with the silver curtain and quickly dashed towards the other side of the platform. He was the Grand Master of Heaven's eldest disciple. Therefore, he clearly knew how and why his master had suddenly become so powerful. Whenever a battle involved treacherous beings, the Grand Master of Heaven would no longer be human. He would transform into a treacherous being, or half-human and half-treacherous being. There was a time when Darby also wanted to obtain such power. He thought it was a very convenient and useful ability. Therefore, he and Maynard Zhao had made so many requests for their master to teach them. After all, they often had to face treacherous beings whenever they traveled within the three purities stage. It seemed reasonable that they learned how to use that power as well. It didn't matter whether the treacherous beings were strong or weak. They always had no other choice but to run away from them. It was even difficult for them to move a single step when faced with these monsters. Nonetheless, the Grand Master of Heaven refused their requests right off the bat. In return, he gave each disciple a strange stone. The light of annihilation was contained within each of the stones. It could easily kill the treacherous beings. All of his 8 personal disciples had one. Even though the stone was only the size of a small bean, the light of annihilation contained inside it could effectively slay the treacherous beings. Stella, Sienna, and Samantha were the weakest among the disciples. But even they could kill the treacherous beings with the help of their stones. Whoosh! After Darby and Stella gained enough distance, they noticed a lump of soil rising from the flat ground in front of them. It was like a tomb without a tablet. When Darby saw the bump, he instantly pulled the silver curtain and released Stella from it. Stella was the youngest disciple of the Grand Master of Heaven. Despite that, she was not easily scared. In fact, she was quite courageous. The lump of soil emitted a disgusting and foul aura. It was most likely that there were treacherous beings hiding underneath it. Swish! She promptly turned around and swiftly pulled the sword strapped on her waist. She maintained her stance and observed silently. The stone given by her master was embedded in her sword. In this way, she would be able to inflict serious damage to a treacherous being. Stella wouldn't normally use this sword to defend against any other enemy. But whenever she encountered a treacherous being, the sword would always come in handy. Buzz! It started emitting a powerful energy. She raised her long sword, then positioned it horizontally at the level of her head. The stone embedded on the hilt was emitting the light of annihilation. It began covering the edges of the sword. Meanwhile, a long stick appeared upon Darby's shoulder. His stone was embedded on the center of the stick. The light of annihilation emitted by the stone radiated towards both ends of the stick. The creatures under the bump seemed to have noticed the enemies outside. Before long, some monkeys came out one after another. At that point, Darby and Stella were able to identify them as hostility-level treacherous beings. Hostility-level treacherous beings were relatively weak. They could easily take them out if there were just a few of them. Unfortunately, they came in a large number this time. Squeak, squeak, squeak. One by one the monkeys began to move. As the monkeys charged at them, Stella's eyes gleamed in anticipation. The sword radiance danced around her. The light of annihilation had swiftly and methodically cut into the bodies of monkeys. It effectively obliterated their shapes. In the meantime, Darby's long stick released thousands of white stick shadows. It smashed the monkeys into pieces in the blink of an eye. With their outstanding expertise, they efficiently annihilated all of the monkeys that came from the lump of soil. Soon enough, nothing came out of the bump anymore. There is no more monkey left. Stella shouted to Darby. Good job, let's go. Darby quickly responded. Boom. At that very moment, they heard a violent roar coming from the treasure bottle platform. It immediately caught their attention. As they turned around simultaneously, they saw that the Grand Master of Heaven's body had expanded many times. Stella noticed a faint shadow on his arm. Sometimes, this shadow was not visible. But there were also times that it suddenly appeared. Darby, look at Master's arm, Stella yelled as she pointed at the Grand Master of Heaven's gigantic body. Darby merely glanced at it with an impassive expression on his face. That's none of our business, Stella. Let's keep moving. After he spoke, he grabbed Stella's arm and dragged her forward. They needed to get out of here as soon as possible. Before long, another 3 bumps appeared in their path. Some monkeys jumped out of the bumps on either sides. Meanwhile, 3 black creatures emerged from the bump in the center. Their bodies were quite similar to those of humans. However, there were 2 pairs of bone blades where their hands and feet should be. It was obvious that they were from the Bone Blade race that supported the Element Spirit civilization. They were quite strong. Stella narrowed her eyes slightly and the light of annihilation began to flow through her longsword once again. Darby, you take care of the 3 members of the Bone Blade race. Meanwhile, I will eliminate the monkeys. Even though the 3 members of the Bone Blade race were strong, they were still no match for Darby. After so many years of patient cultivation, Darby was almost as strong as the Grand Master of Heaven. Therefore, Stella had complete confidence in his abilities. But just as Stella finished speaking, the 3 members of the Bone Blade race had already charged towards them. They moved with such speed that they were only a few meters away front of them. Stella, watch out! Darby had obviously sensed something was wrong. He quickly pulled Stella back and an umbrella instantly appeared in his hand. The umbrella unfurled at once. It had an excellent defensive power. Therefore, it would be extremely difficult to destroy. It was one of Darby's most prized and powerful defensive treasures. Yet, Stella heard a loud slashing sound. The umbrella had been easily torn apart like it was just a piece of paper. This was the work of the 3 members of the Bone Blade race. Moreover, Darby's shoulder had also been severed off. Darby's blood splattered onto Stella's face. Her eyes full of shock and fear, she realized that these were not ordinary members of the Bone Blade race. The expressions in their eyes were exactly like that of her master when he went mad. Chapter 3620, Powerful Weapons. Blood spurted out from Darby's chest as if a rain of blood had fallen. His entire arm was torn apart, exposing a terrible wound. Darby, Stella's voice trembled at the scene. She didn't expect that the 3 members of the Bone Blade race would be this powerful. Heal yourself quickly, I'll guard you for as long as I can. Saying this, she drew out a second sword. She only used the first one to deal with the treacherous beings, while the second one was actually her personal weapon. Although she was determined to fight until death, she was still trembling in fear. Darby calmly said, "Don't move." What do you mean?" Stella was panicking so she could just ask in confusion. "Just do it, hurry up and hide behind me. We don't have much time," Darby ordered loudly as he saw that Stella was out of it. Seeing Darby's serious face, she immediately did as she was told, even though she didn't understand what was going on. Darby immediately stretched out his hand. Suddenly, 3 items emerged on his palm. There were a green rune, a yellow rune, and a sheet of transparent glazed glass. Whoosh! Darby quickly threw the yellow rune at their feet. Then, as the rune spread out, butterfly-shaped shields emerged from it. Swoosh! The shields grew and covered them tightly. Crash! Bang! Just when they put up the shields, the members of the Bone Blade race launched another barrage of powerful attacks. Their speed and strength were completely terrifying. They would be in extreme danger if Darby hadn't put up the shields in the nick of time. Even the umbrella from before couldn't block their all-out attack. Fortunately, the densely packed butterfly-shaped shields were able to resist them, buying Darby a few seconds to prepare for his next plan. The yellow rune was a life-saving treasure for Darby. He had over 1,000 treasures with him, and this one would certainly belong to the top 3 in terms of value and capability. Though he was hesitant to use it at first, he had no other choice if he wanted to save their lives. Then, Darby used the green rune and attached it to his wound. With a flash of green light, the wound healed rapidly, and his torn arm regenerated. Now, their only problem was the powerful foes that were still attacking them. As he completely recovered, Darby raised the glass in his hand. Upon a closer look, the glass was divided into 2 layers, and there was a strange creature in it. The creature had an odd shape as if it had been crushed and turned into a specimen. "Master doesn't want me to tell you about it," Darby finally spoke. "About what?" Stella asked. Crack! Darby broke the glass by his bare hands. Then, the creature contained in it immediately surfaced. It was like fluid in form, but it returned to its original shape in no time. It turned out to be a treacherous being. "There are so many things in this world that are being controlled by treacherous beings," Darby said in a soft voice. Then, the treacherous being suddenly drilled into his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. Afterward, a faint shadow appeared on the surface of his body. 3 milky white claws, as sharp as sickles, slowly grew on his arm, while a chain formed in his other hand. "The treacherous being's power is considered to be the strongest power," Darby said sadly. "But sooner or later, the ones who borrow their power would inevitably become their slaves." This was the warning that their master told them as he bestowed the treacherous beings. Darby raised his right hand, and the chain drew a visible arc in the air. The claws on his arm spun viciously under the pulling of the chain. Whoosh! The 3 members of the Bone Blade race quickly reacted and retreated. At the same time, the monkeys surrounded them. The power and speed that were granted to Darby left Stella stunned. She only saw Darby's figure flash before her eyes, and then the huge claws spun at incredible speed, creating several irregular arcs in the air. The arcs drove away the monkeys and caught up with the 3 members of the Bone Blade race in the blink of an eye. They successfully hit their targets. Crash! Splat! The bodies of the 3 members were instantly cut in half. Soon after, the treacherous beings hidden in their bodies had come out. These 3 treacherous beings were very similar to the monkeys, but they were a bit larger in size. Whoosh! As Darby returned to Stella's side, the claws and chain quickly retracted back into his body. Then, he took out the long stick embedded with the light of annihilation and said, "Stella, you can make your move now." Stella was still recovering from shock after witnessing all of this. As Darby spoke beside her, she came to her senses. She waved her long sword and rushed towards the monkeys. Because the light of annihilation was fatal to the monkeys, they were all easily killed. The 3 treacherous beings that escaped from the bodies of the 3 members of the Bone Blade race were also killed. After a narrow escape from absolute death, Stella stared at Darby and took the opportunity to ask, "Where did you acquire the treacherous being?" Darby fell silent for a while before he decided to start talking. He didn't intend to hide anything from Stella, so he told her everything he knew. In the entire 3 Purities stage, the treacherous beings were, without a doubt, the most terrifying creatures. However, the Nihility race and the Element Spirit civilization knew they were afraid of the light of annihilation. To avoid the light of annihilation, they had to sneak into the bodies of other creatures. Campbell was even able to use the light of annihilation to deal with the other treacherous beings after he possessed Zen's body. However, Zen was possessed passively. On the other hand, Darby took the initiative to be possessed. He used the treacherous being as a weapon. Although Maynard had got the light of annihilation from his master a few years ago, he was still unsatisfied. Indeed, the light of annihilation could deal with the ordinary treacherous beings, but when it came to the truly powerful ones, it would not be enough. Moreover, it was more difficult to deal with the treacherous beings that possessed powerful warriors. But it means that you'll become a walking corpse if you are possessed by a treacherous being, right? Stella asked, knowing how the process usually worked. Darby smiled and said, "While that is true for most cases, not all treacherous beings will take total control of one's body. Some of them are friendly, and will even help you defeat your enemies. That's the friendly type of treacherous beings. They can become our most powerful weapons." As Darby spoke, he took out 2 pieces of glazed glass. Then, immediately after, the treacherous being that was attached to his body got out from his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose, and returned to the glass. Right there and then, Stella was able to see the treacherous beings form through the glass. From it, she could clearly see the claws and chain that Darby had used earlier. Use the treacherous beings as weapons, huh? Stella muttered to herself. It still seemed kind of unbelievable to her. But what frustrated her was the fact that her master and brothers had hidden this fact from her and her sisters. "Then, why did you hide it from me?" Stella asked Darby with disappointed eyes. "Our master didn't tell us anything at the beginning either," Darby said as he shook his head. After being able to kill a follower of the Element Spirit civilization, Maynard got a hold of this secret from him. Then, Maynard approached our master and tried to confirm this matter. The Grand Master of Heaven was famous for his bloodlust, but he favored his disciples very much. Maynard pestered him until he got his consent to use the treacherous beings. "What do you mean? Our master deliberately hid this secret from us. Why would he do that?" Stella asked as her brows furrowed. "Yes, he did," Darby replied as he stared at Stella seriously. "But he did it for our own sake. As I've said, not all treacherous beings will be willing to cooperate with you. If we control them for a long time, there would be consequences. Possessing others is their way to regain their consciousness. Therefore, our master didn't really want us to resort to this method. He would rather pass this method to Phelps and Ewing than teach us."